anticipated numbers for increases in base rates until December. There's some charts. There's a summary snapshot of the capital projects that are built into the budget on the right of the screen. I'll pull it up on the screen, on the big screen here shortly. Down the left is just the short mid long-term priorities and annual that we talked about. The water sewer, touch base on some tweaks I've made on the capital projects. I'd like to see them and upload that in. But also, on the capital projects, kind of look and see. These are just built in upon the initial conversation, but I have some comment on some of them along the way. Then we'll conclude tonight's meeting with the discussion on salaries and wages.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for the tips.
Yes, thank you.
Call 12 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Slow.
Yesterday's meeting wasn't on the website.
Oops.
No, it's up right
See David back there?
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
We got a minute.
Holy cow.
I'm ready to cut now. Well, I don't know if I'm not fully.
Level past it.
I'm not working any
Really?
days.
Yeah.
What's the combination of your maintenance though too?
Huh?
Exactly what they told me.
Oh, sure.
Good morning.
Morning.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning.
Don't worry, it's been like that all day.
We're trying to keep the crowd riveted.
That's right. Keep us awake.
Did he put something in the water?
Yeah, it's called alcohol.
Well, if everybody's ready, we'll go ahead and get started. So again, just kind of recap, tonight potentially could be the last formal study session for the 2019 budget. We know we'll review it again after the election in 3 weeks on November 6th. But if we do finish up tonight, we'll be off the next 3 weeks until November 6th. It's not trying to sway anybody here, I'm just saying it back here. I do have next Tuesday reserved community. I usually do that every year. So we started off in this process with a general 101 budget overview with David Green. I changed the process from years past because usually capital projects and salaries don't talk about to the very end. So change that till we have this conversation up front. We did that in that second meeting. Just get the conversation going because it's not a one-night quick decision on either of those two items. We We came back again with the general fund from beginning to end with all the department heads. I did go in today and modify the police budget a little bit to add some more funding for code enforcement. So your overall fund balance went from around revenue or expenditures from about 77 to 65,000. I'll show that to you a little bit. So it's not a huge impact. Police is the one department we have which there's potential for a lot of overtime because it's a 24/7 operation department we have. But there's been, like Carl and I talked today, been full staff. We're anticipating a good year, knock on wood. And especially in the summertime, having the SOs available to work shifts is a huge difference for those 3 months. We spent the previous meeting just going through the special revenue funds, capital project fund. We'll touch base a little bit on some items tonight. And then we round back after we talk about water sewer. I forgot about perpetual care because we really can't do much with it. It's for the cemetery fund. We only use the interest off this fund for cemetery upkeep, so it's very nominal. But otherwise, we're going to finish up with wages and salaries.
Do we need to, if we're planning on investing the money that's in perpetual care, we need to, the budget needs to reflect that, correct?
True, and I'm glad you brought that up because Peaks Investment Management emailed me today, not Robert Hunsucker, but his partner. They just announced a new 2-year CD at 3%. So, perpetual care, the 600-some-thousand, the general fund call trust that we're not using, we need to talk about. And I plan on talking about in November after the budget, but, and then also we have some sewer investment, water investment fees. Knowing that we're not gonna actually spend sewer money for about 4 years, a short 2-year term on 3% might be something we're talking about. We'll tie it up 2 years, but we know we're not gonna be able to spend it really, at least not the majority of it. But that's a good conversation to have coming up. I haven't planned on tonight though.
Okay.
So actually I can schedule that for the November 6th meeting while we wait for the election to be done.
Yeah, if everyone's okay with that.
Just as a budget topic on investments.
Yes.
Mary, can we add that to the November 6th meeting? Just budget investments, so going back to perpetual care, a small percentage of the, is it burials or lot sales, David, remember?
I wanna say it's lots of.
Lot sales go to this, it's established, a lot of communities with cemeteries have this. Can only use the interest, so that's actually a good idea, invest this and see if we can get more interest. Right now, Color Trust is, like I said the other night, is 2.25.
Yeah, if we can't spend it, might as well make it work.
Yeah, you can actually put this in some longer term investment, help backfill the cemetery.
Sounds like Larry's representing.
I want to speak with my attorney.
If we change our fees for the cemetery, should we have that on the November 6th discussion too?
Sure.
To change our budget?
Yeah. At some point in December, probably that, we have to have that first meeting, talk about sewer increases, but, we're just not there yet.
Sure.
We'll talk about that here in just a minute.
Absolutely.
So think of any other fees, we did update the fee schedule on some small items, we didn't do water and sewer increase like we normally do. Cemetery we haven't talked about for a few years, but it's worth talking about. Went over rec and police fees, miscellaneous fees, and admin fees, whether it's anything else too pressing to increase at this time. In January, a budget-related item, I sent Reggie Gordon today, before we dive into this, a draft of the director job description for them to help me fill that out because they work it. I try to put in kind of broad categories as far as duties and responsibilities and ask them to put their eyes on it. I want to schedule that in January for a conversation because I'd like to advertise that position in February, if not March. Reggie Gordon's retired, but he's hanging on to work part-time while his wife is the director. Reggie's retiring probably next year. He told me, even though school ends in June, her contract ends in July, I think July 1 roughly. So it sounds like she wants to work through July, then our new rec director will take over. That's a position where I'd like to definitely have somebody on for 2 or 3 months working with him. So I want to revisit that rec budget too when we get through the election too.
Or they will stay in town, or?
I talked to Gordon, it's like talking to a 10-year-old. I mean that
Yeah, no, I
lovingly, because
know.
he doesn't know his kids and his granddaughter, he doesn't know what they're gonna do, but
They're ready for the next step of their
the
life.
next step of their lives, absolutely. So for perpetual care, we'll talk about investing some of these funds, or most of these funds, because we can't really do much but use the interest. Very nominal interest, about $1,500 a year. And going into sewer, I'll kind of bring up the conversation about the Rocktellus rate study. David, do you want to just summarize your conversation with Rocktellus today?
Sure. The really short answer is we don't have an answer yet. But that's not what you want to hear. We have another meeting and they have a follow-up meeting with JVA next week to confirm the schedule and that kind of thing. The schedule that JVA gave us basically has the JVA's portion of the utility plant update being done by mid-December, but giving Rocktellus another 30 or 45 days, maybe even into March, to complete the financial analysis based on what decisions are made and what the primary mode, the primary type of system that we think we want to move forward with after JVA. So I've got, Troy and I have a meeting with JVA next week. They've got their RFPs back from 6 or 8 different vendors for different types of treatment plants. We're going to go over those in a little more detail than the first couple of weeks of November. Myself, Todd, and probably one of the other guys will be touring some of the plants that are similar to that in this area by certain manufacturers and that kind of thing, so that we can actually talk to the real live operators and see what they think versus what the manufacturer rep tells us. And get as Paul Harvey said, the rest of the story, so that we can make a somewhat intelligent, informed decision in our assumption of which one would probably be best for us to use. Having said all that, Rocktellus wants to follow up. They were still planning on having their numbers done by the end of the year or at the very beginning of January. That's still not in time for us to adopt a budget. But they are planning to present the board with options of if it's loan and cash or loan cash grant scenarios. But basically the worst case scenario would be cash on hand and a loan or a bond to financing the whole thing without getting any grant. Because we're not guaranteed any of the grants. I mean, we have to apply for them and see what happens. Troy's track record has been phenomenal. Unfortunately, at some point, that's going to fall off the rail.
Don't jinx us.
Well, I was thinking today,
Optimism over there.
That's realism.
well, that's kind of another side impact of this 112 proposition, because when gas leaves and production goes down, the severance tax goes down, and that's what funds the dollar impact, energy impact. So, I'm not trying to pull in politics, but it's a reality to the budget, so.
Yep. So basically, I asked Rocktellus today, and they said that I told them that we would be adopting the budget by December 4th. More than likely, what's going to happen is they're going to give us an educated estimate as to what they think it's going to be at, but they probably would recommend, I told them that one theory would be that we just rip the whole Band-Aid off and we just raise the rate, whatever it needs to be raised next year, and we take the phone calls for however long we take the phone calls, and then it's done. And that also is the most financially beneficial to the town because we put the most money aside for the longest period of time, so we have the most capital to move forward in the 4-year time frame when we have to start paying it back. However, having said that, they aren't going to have a solid number that they absolutely are gonna back by the time we have to adopt the budget. So they will be able to give us a educated estimate as to what they think it probably is gonna be close to, and then the board can decide, are they gonna rip the whole Band-Aid off, or are you gonna take half or 3/4 of what they think it's gonna be, and add that next year, and then add the other in 2020 or in 2021, depending on how the board wants to try and do that. So, I gave you the short answer to start with, and then the long answer, so.
And that's a tricky part. I mean, we could have had this ready by December, but there's a delay with the DOLA grant and the processing and so on and so forth. So neither here nor there, but right now it's around $24-25 base rate, which is your sewer upkeep charge. That's your base rate coming in. That's your stable number. Usage has been fairly consistent based upon water use and sewer use, but I put $330 in there as a 2019 budget, so I just threw in just a small 1% what we would have normally done increase. Right now we're projecting close to $325, but I'm basing that on last year's usage, and the previous year's pretty close. You know, the best financially, I think Larry mentioned this to me, is that if we know a firm number to increase, like David's terminology, ripping the Band-Aid off, but educating the community before we do that, we can build up during the next 3 years enough cash flow to reduce our debt service with CDPHE. Because right now, in my theory, if we can build a plant, I'm gonna call it a plant, not a survey, for $5 million. See, that's the option we have with the plants they have is $5 million. If I could take a $1 million budget, which we currently have, we go after a DOLA grant for mill and match, and I would tweak that a little bit. Part of the reason we've been successful, I don't just do a 50-50. I do a 55-45 or 58, 42. If you give more, like the senior center, that was a 55-45. So that bumped us up. We're willing to invest more into that operation. Plus on that one, like we're paying for the utility study, but with DOLA funds, we pay for that architect out of our own pocket. And they take all that consideration. And that's part of the game we play with the state. Is you're competing with, they do interviews for these DOLA grants for 3 straight days, all day long. That's how many there are. So.
And you have 8 minutes, right?
No, we have 5 minutes. They have a clock on the wall, and the timer behind the 11 panel members. And they ring a ding, and you can finish your sentence, and then they say thank you or have all questions, we go on to the next person. And that's how it is. So very competitive. Platteville has an upper hand because these are severance tax funds that Bill is allocated for grants, and Platteville has a large impact. I really pushed that when I went after the senior center. Very few questions, but it's not Halloween yet.
Very seasonal.
Step on it.
Save that for later in the evening, okay?
That was the email from the Town of Platteville.
I know, I usually get 3. I get one message and I figured that out. I sent that out because of the senior and the Saturday light stuff, and I almost forgot. So with that said, it's kind of on hold. I mean, literally it is on hold. So I stayed conservative in the revenues. I did put in the transfer from College Trust that we set aside for that sewer screen a few years ago. That's roughly $230, a little more than that. And I was very conservative on this one, CDPHE or DOLA. And the way it works is, it's estimated to be about a $450,000 to $500,000 planning project this next year that we're going to have to do, planning and design. To design the whole thing and plan for it. Pretty expensive. This is just a study. So I put in roughly $480,000 total between our money and I'm hoping CDPHE. Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment will loan out, does have a grant for up to $300,000. So so I'm just being conservative. And there's no required match, you just have to come up with the remaining amount of money, i.e. this 230, to do that plan design. DOLA, it has a required 50-50 match, no matter what. I'd rather get the 350 from or 300 from CDPHE or 250, because I'm not applying for DOLA grant. Reserve that big grant application for the following year to build what we're doing. I don't wanna do big grants every year, every cycle, because
We're not, well.
yeah, they say you can apply every cycle, which is like twice a year, sometimes 3, depending on severance tax, but
That's gonna affect decisions.
it is. And the more we show them that Platteville is trying to self-sustain, pay its own way, blah, 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 the better we look. Some of these, when we went down there early, on the senior grant, it was Steve Nelson and Noreen Schoeneman, and we watched 4 or 5, because it was our first time. Like City of Longmont was right before us, and they brought in that Smuckers plan. They gave away all their impact fees to build roads, to entice Smuckers to come to Longmont. Then they went to the state to ask for money to build roads. They got denied a heartbeat. So you have to use a little bit of common sense when you go out this DOLA stuff. Because they did not trust them at all. They had some really nice suits, but they didn't trust them at all. Sure, good.
On the CDPHE portion, and I agree 100% with Troy and I have talked through that a lot, but the thing is, that is a disadvantaged communities grant, is what that is. And so JDA thinks that they can help us potentially find a couple of loopholes that we might be able to fit into that application for that. Technically, I think Platteville makes just a skosh over the average income that would be allowed to be considered for the disadvantaged communities. But it also falls into the number of residents in the community and some other things that JVA has been able to use in the past to help get. So their JVA was optimistic that they could help us obtain that, but it's in no way a shoo-in. But I agree 100% with Troy that we've got to exhaust that possibility and do everything we can to try and get that one first, so that we aren't 2 years in a row asking for $500,000 to $1 million from DOLA if we can help it.
From my perspective, we have the funds to just pay for the plan grant outright. Yes, we do. But it's more important to get that $1 million match to offset our long-term debt obligation to pay the sewer development.
Right.
So with that said, if these come in potentially, we the transfer we're gonna make with David Green, we do get the grant, probably looking at probably the first quarter, if not really the second quarter of next year. So I'd like to have the design mostly done by the end of 2019, maybe 2020. The revenue side is about $2.2 million in cash. Then you go into expenditures. None of this is just adjusted based upon the board approved the health insurance, they approved work comp, property casualty. These are things David Green puts these in. I don't mess with them. Salary hasn't been adjusted at all. So going into operations, David really worked hard to just maintain the line the best he could. David, you want to just discuss some of your operations for sewer thing?
The very first, or the line item 1373, the discharge permits, the state tells us what we're going to spend on that. That's not an option or negotiable. The rest of them, as we're going down this part, we held the line. I think, well, hang on supplies. I bumped it up just because we're projected to be over a little bit. That's partially our chemical costs on the chlorine and on the dechlorinization, just because of some of the lack of a better term, the squirreliness that was going on that we've been dealing with out there. So I increased that just slightly, but you can see that's a fairly nominal. The small, no.
And the projection on supplies may not be. This is based on percentage, so we still may. We're already over budget, but we may not go much over.
Well, and the thing is, I know how much we've been spending on that right now, and we I guess at this point, to try and avoid the violations, I'm actually probably putting a little more chlorine to it than we have to, just trying to make sure we get the kill before it goes out to the river. Of course, the last couple of weeks didn't help with the squirreliness of the nitrifying and denitrifying and the nitrates and nitrites, but, I'm trying to think if there's anything else right there in that number. We roll down a little bit.
I do want to mention that Cassell is threefold. We talked about that during the general fund with Mary, transferring to assist from Cassell. Budgeted about 23,000 roughly to do the new program, and then we had another 7 because we're going to have to do 2 or 3 or 4 months on both systems. So with this is Cassell, a lot of it's for utility bills. So I took a third out of admin, third out of water, third out of sewer, just as a reminder. So. Sorry.
No, you don't need to apologize. The engineering services, obviously, we increased that some, tripled it, because there's gonna be quite a bit, where we'll be using Steve, at Northern or JVA. Troy and I talked, part of the scope of the JVA scope for the utility plan update did not include them helping us with the pre-qualification portion, trying to get through CDPHE and get that grant. So I have not got numbers from them yet as to what that's gonna be, but that's probably the line item that we would use to help cover that expense, to have them help us with that application. And then I'm not sure whether we're gonna use them or Northern Engineering to help write the actual RFP. More than likely it'll be JVA, but I don't know that for sure. I don't know if that gives them an advantage or not, if they write the RFP and then they also are gonna bid on the RFP to design it and oversee the project for us. But we've got 6 or 8 or 10 maybe engineering firms that are interested in bidding on that RFP. So I don't think just because Northern helps us write it or JVA helps us write it, it is a guarantee that either one of them is going to end up as our design and consulting engineer for the actual project. So as we continue to roll down through there.
If I may, David, I asked David Green about this depreciation expense, and it's always been the Platteville budget of water and sewer, it's depreciating the capital value of your system. And he said, most places don't put it in their budget because it's not a cash flow. A lot of small towns used to track it just to show the capital depreciation of their system. And I said, how does this impact us financially? He said, it doesn't at all. I said, then why do we have it? He said, let's take it out.
Well, it's kind of like keeping track of the para, right?
Yeah. So he still has a total, they still keep a spreadsheet in the water and sewer separately of what the values are. And there's a program that he uses, which is a state program to show depreciation based upon the value of your system. He can still do that. But I didn't like this influencing my number process because it's not cash.
Right.
And as far as capital projects, you have your slip line.
Yeah, except we wanted to bump that to 90. I thought I had done that to 90 because we were looking at 3 years worth because of their backlog. Because we had 30,017 that was budgeted. Then we had projected 60 this year, and then I was projecting, I don't have the original one that I gave you.
You may have put in 90. What I looked at is this bottom number right here, revenue or expenditures.
And that probably that dipped quite a bit. We take that other 30 out of it.
Yeah.
Can I take you back a minute?
Yep.
This transfer that you made regarding this screening at the lagoon, can I assume that that is not going to happen then, this screening project?
Yes and no. You can assume it's not going to happen where we thought it was going to happen,
Okay.
but it will be required as part of the new process. So it will be rolled into the final construction costs and estimates that we get from
Okay.
JPA.
But it's not going in the lagoon system as it's presently.
No, no. At this point, we decided that, especially once we got the new permit from the state, that it was not, if we had built it, and if we had talked at one time about going in and building that screen because we need it, and that it wouldn't be money that was thrown away, and it wouldn't have been. But it was not the ideal location once we're building the new plant. So rather than build it in a less than ideal location, we're gonna wait and build it at the more ideal spot to actually work better with the new facility. So that money is still gonna get spent down the road, it's just not gonna get spent now, so we're just basically renaming it because we're gonna use it as part of that match grant or to pay the additional portion.
Great, thanks.
And speaking of, I'll pass this along so all of you can take a look at it. I was teasing the town manager that we need to put this in with the next billing cycle about flushable wipes, but we'll let you finish your dinner first.
South Carolina?
They hired divers.
They put divers into their raw sewage
Oh.
to get the quote unquote flushable wipes, the baby wipes, the body wipes, that they say on the package they're flushable. The only thing that has to qualify for flushable is it has to pass through a 4-inch pipe.
Right, has to go
It
through
doesn't
your
mean
house.
it deteriorates or that it doesn't tear up the pumps or plug the pumps. So they've got some interesting looking pictures here for you to look at once you're done with dinner. But, so anyway, moving right along, Ross.
Going back to the slip line, David did initially put 90,000, and then David puts a lot of stuff in his budget. I take a lot of stuff out, I'll be honest with you. That's just the way we work. But he wanted the 30,000 for the portable fixed generator for the Bill Vessel lift station. That one, when it backs up, we have a very short window to get down there before basins back up. So I took that 30,000 one and I put it here because I think that's a short-term priority that no matter what happens with the new lagoon or mechanical plant, that was my reason.
And we were looking at one of two things. With the new senior center, community center having the transfer switch and us having the generator in the shop, they could actually run that as an emergency shelter in a major snowstorm or something like that. If we need to use that generator to run the community center as an emergency shelter, we lose one of the generators that we've been banking on to run our lift stations. So right now we have 2 portable generators and we have 3 lift stations without generation at them. So right now we run one to Bella Vista and leave it run until the power comes back on. The second one we bounce between Goodrich Court lift station and the lift station at 32.5, where we have a little more time in between. We can plug them in at one, leave it there, pump it down, unplug it, run it back to the other lift station, pump it down, turn around, run it back. It's a pain in the butt, but we can get it done. But if we don't have at least one more portable, so the other part of what we were thinking and what we're going to look at is possibly a permanent with an automatic transfer switch at Bella Vista and put that in down there and then have the other portable generator that we currently have on hand to run back and forth between. The lift station at Goodrich Court actually is it's a 220 versus a 440. It's not a 3-phase, it's only a single-phase motor. So we actually have a smaller portable generator that we could potentially rewire and use over there, but we're not 100% sure it's going to run as well as the bigger one that we're using right now. So if we did get into a long-term situation, we would work with Mike Evans or another electrician to go ahead and wire that one in and use it, so we're not literally bouncing back and forth every 45 minutes to an hour. If you're only doing that for 2 or 3 hours while Excel gets the power back up, that's not the end of the world. But if we had to do it for 2 or 3 days, that would be a totally different story. So
We have to prepare for the worst. And this is a rough estimate. We don't even have any hard numbers yet for the board
right.
on the generator. As far as the utility plan update, I put our grant share of that study, which is 52.5, our grant share is 27.5, both will pay 25. In the 2019 budget, I'll talk to JV next week when David and I meet with them to see when did they want paid. Last time they waited till the end and said, we're done, so that number may move between the 2 years. And then your SCADA,
Yeah, I thought I bumped that to 10.
you did.
I'm pretty sure I did, because the bid was 20. We had put the money in to upgrade the SCADA system this year, but with the upgrades that we needed to do and the hours it was gonna take, we did not have enough funds in there. So the option that I would have would be I could, as we get towards the end of the year, have him order all the equipment and bill me for the hardware portion of that bid this year, and then we could bid, then we could do the rest of it in 2019, or we can just bid the 10,000 in both water and sewer in 19 and just get it done in January. So.
Well, the SCADA is very system. I mean, it's our alarm system to manage all this stuff. So I voted back to 10. I think the budget will be fine on that one. We can't take all of our small capital projects out of the budget because of this nutrient facility.
Right. And the pump for the lift station, the 3,500, we did just spend $3,500 on a new pump for that lift station. But we took the old pump out to have it rebuilt. And it's a sealed pump, it's a submersible pump, and the local representatives won't rebuild it without us signing off that they're not liable for the non-explosion and everything else. And the $3,500 isn't, to buy another new one that is certified from the factory isn't worth the chance that we would take of spending $1,200 or $1,500 to have this one rebuilt and then use it again and have a problem with it. So I just put the money in for next year to buy another one so we have one on the shelf. So.
Now, could we use, when you do that, could we use the other one, say rebuild it, and then we have, like I said, a spare one then?
Well, that's what I'm saying, because it's a sealed unit, Nick, and it's gotta be waterproof and explosion proof. The group that we use in Fort Morgan for rewinding our motors and dealing with that won't certify it, won't rebuild it and certify it that it's still explosion proof and completely sealed. And
Is there a different vendor that you could contract with, or you would prefer?
possibly, but we're looking at, we were looking at about $1,500 to $1,700, which is right at that 50% margin. And kind of what I tend to do, Spencer, is if we're at 50% or more, or we're very close to that 50% number of what new is, we just go new versus, you know, I mean, if we're at 50% or less, if we can justify it and we can get another 2 or 3 years out of it, I have no problem. And several of our pumps that are above grade pumps, we do rebuild and we have spares. We've done exactly what you said, Nick. We bought a new one, we took the old one out, put the new one in, we rebuilt that one, we put the other one in, pulled that out, rebuilt it, and we've got it sitting on the shelf ready to go. We can do that at Bella Vista and we can do that at the main Lagoon lift station. We can't do that at Goodrich or at 32.5 because they are the submersible and they have to be sealed units.
Okay.
Well, I know this is a wild thought here that just crossed my mind, but if you look at the total revenues or expenditures the last 3 years, before 2017, the sewer fund was hurting pretty bad, so we took a conservative approach. And Dave and I joked that he put stuff in, I take stuff out. That's just the process. We have to prioritize and decide what year is best, if it's a priority, a need, or if it's a want. Sewer stuff is usually it's a need. As you can see, we have a pretty decent revenue or expenditures the last few years. So if you look at that bottom total cash available potentially at 1.3 million, that number's too low. We know it's gonna go up because we're gonna increase the base rates. We just don't know what we're gonna increase. So the crazy thought is if the next 3 to 4 years, if we can get this to 2 to 2.5 million, get a DOLA grant, our debt income, long-term debt income could go down to maybe 2 or 2.5 million debt income or debt obligation. You can use other available funds to pay that off too. So what I'm trying to get at is the least impact on the community if possible. If we're gonna bump the rate up, at least in my perspective living here, if I know I'm only gonna be a delegation for 10 years instead of 20, that matters to me. So it's just a point of conversation. But I know if my children, if they buy a house here, it'll be that in 30 years, 20 years from now, that's not a great conversation. Really, we're gonna revisit the sewer fund, obviously, because we have to. As far as the water fund, it's a little less complicated.
He still took stuff out.
Looked at 2017 and projection 2018 revenues. I did increase this to 430. We didn't do the 1% increase yet, but I think that'll come. I'm going to propose it to the board at the end of the year. It just depends on, the economy. People can pay for more water usage, blah blah blah. There's different factors involved.
Do our rates get raised from northern, where we get our water from? Is that dependent on how we charge the water out, or are we pretty contracted in?
Let me go down to that.
I was gonna say, we've got I was gonna say, our demand charge and our treated water purchase, we didn't raise them much. We get a letter from Central as far as the demand charge. Our assessments, are those up above that, Troy? Because that's where we pay northern.
Water assessment's 1508, 43,000.
Okay. What did we budget last year, was it 43?
Water assessments, we pay northern right here. This is key because this also includes something besides water assessments. So the normal water assessments are around 41 to 43,000.
The reason that's skewed is that 120,000 that we purchased, we did not have a line item this year for water purchase, and the board authorized $120,000 to buy 4 shares of CBT when they came available. So that's where that came from.
We didn't want to make a new line item for a 1-year purchase, so.
Right, but that still puts us at, we're still in the 40-some thousand
Still in the
range.
40-some.
So, I was thinking that I just saw it for next year. The town owns 856, and we just signed the temporary use on the 857th CBT share. We've got another home that was being built here in town that they brought in a share. And I want to say that our assessment under current rates was 38,000 and change, 39. Plus there's a couple other, we pay a ditch assessment for the Platteville irrigated milling ditch out of this water assessment. And so, and they don't have their meeting till January to determine if that's going up or not.
So Spencer, to answer your question on the demand charge and the treated water, those are 2 big ones. They've been pretty consistent, so we're pretty comfortable with 133 and 100 respectively as far as expenditures for those based upon, and we haven't received any indication of big increases.
Thank you.
But as far as going back to revenues, there's really not much else in there. Projected 2 new building permits, and we did for this past year. This 1294 is our fairly new after the last few years, and system investment fee. There's also one in, I think it's around $1,400. This past year we completed a raw water supply plan with Brad Hagan and Civil Resources. Their recommendation that they can justify that this number for water can be increased. So we're waiting on the utility study be done, because they're gonna do the same thing. They're gonna be able to give us recommendation and justify that rational nexus that we need by law to adjust that increase. So I'm gonna propose both of those to you, probably first of next year. So when new building does occur, we get a little more money out of those system investment charges. So there's a lot of spokes in the wheel of budget, that's for sure. But going back, again, this stuff, salaries and wages and stuff, that hasn't been looked at. Otherwise, across the board, you're pretty much held the line, David.
Mm-hmm.
Water meters, are we close on getting all the water meters replaced in Platteville?
We are, but I've been here for 10 years and we've been replacing water meters for 10 years and they have a 10 to 15-year life. So it's kind of a perpetual circle, although we can come down, they've actually increased it. It used to be a 10 to 12-year life, now it's a 15 to 18, sometimes a 20-year with the newer, we use the Neptune meters. Part of that eventually will probably switch over from actually being meters to I would like to, in the next 2 or 3 years, if we can figure out a way to do it, would be to propose where we don't have to go out and do the drive-by meters anymore. We still have just under 40 meters that we have to literally touch to get the meter reading from. We're getting those swapped out to where they're all radio reads, where we can drive by or walk by with the handheld and it'll pick them up. But when I got here, it was taking 2.5 days to get the meter reads. Greg can get them in 6 hours now.
How does he do that?
He drives past every meter to get them done. And then the 40-some that have to be touched, then he gets out and touches each of those to get the reading. The technology is getting better and the price of it is coming down. Eventually, we would like to put 2 or 3 radio antennas around town where literally when Charlene is ready to do meter reads, she pushes a button and it downloads. And she gets everything. And if there's a meter that pops up that didn't read properly, then we go out and we deal with 1 or 2 or, on average, we deal with what we call 5 to 10 rereads per month. Greg takes a lot of pride in keeping it under 5. And we give him a lot of crap if it's over that, but,
Some people can, they have water leaks they don't know about, or, drift in the line, and the water
Right.
goes way up, and we have to do that.
and the meters that we have will actually read down to 1/10 of a gallon on a consistent basis and would show you a leaky toilet or something like that. But we don't have the ability to read all that right now, but that's where that radio system could actually flag that and possibly catch that for somebody versus the once a month that we go out and read the meters and all of a sudden they've got an extra 10,000 gallons of use or whatever the case is. So eventually that's coming, but to answer the question, I left 25,000 in there. That basically is 100 meters per year. We've been buying more like 60 to 80 meters per year, and now that we're getting caught up, that number will continue to recede, but I just left it as kind of a, if nothing else, a pad for the whole budget so that if we went over somewhere else, we had a little bit of extra that we could cover it with.
Depreciation expense, same as sewer fund, we just took it out because it's not a cash item. You can get it separate on a different spreadsheet. How about this one, Dave? Line locator?
We already purchased that this year, so.
So, do we need that number in there?
No.
There you go. We have to put it in. We're good on cleaning the water storage tanks?
We don't have to do that. That's a 5-year cycle, and we had done some repairs this year and that kind of thing, so we're good for another couple of years on that.
Okay. As you can see, I took the C-Mac truck out of the budget. Those are no longer available. I took out any large capital outlay. 10,000 for, if we have a big water line replacement, it's good to have some money in there. You can't predict those.
Basically, the contingency fund.
It's pretty much. So, this year we're gonna go over a little bit, but overall we're looking at 1.1 million water fund. I don't wanna forget about this fund because we have some large projects. We have a $750,000 to $2 million big capital project we discussed. We've just tabled it right now. It's not a high priority, but to pressurize this town better than it is now. If you recall, we talked about replacing the two, was it 6-inch feed line from the water tank to this system? And upgrade that to a 12, probably a 14-inch line. Just to increase that flow, for fire flow especially. But,
It'll give us more volume, which will increase the pressure a little bit, but it'll increase the volume and the fire flows is the main impetus with that.
So we had that conversation about doing some tier CDs or some other types of investment, using some of the Hollow Trust system investment money would be a good conversation to have. I think we have about 300,000 or 400,000 in system investment fees just in the water fund. So some short-term increases for some investments. So both those funds have over $1 million cash available today. To me, I'd like to get to the point where water sewer have $4 to $5 million available, but we're not quite there yet. The only way to get to that is to have some growth, to be honest with you. This community, the way it is, unless they pay more fees or base rates, it's not gonna ever happen. That's my perspective.
Do you have the list of the comparison fees to other towns made up yet? I know you guys were working on that.
I have the spreadsheet available. What I can do is I can, Mary, do you think, is there any way to get that on one paper? Right now, it's pretty lengthy. Let me, what I plan on doing is.
Unless we take out some categories
Yeah.
or.
Cause what I asked Charlene to do is to talk to these other 13, 14 towns and say, list everything in their utility bill. And if what we have, like trash, is not in the utility bill, find out what it is and list it. So it's a very extensive spreadsheet, because every town's different. I think what I wanna do is break that down to more simplistic, spreadsheet to go with the memo. So I plan to have that done the next 2 weeks, so that's okay. But that is gonna be a key. I definitely want you to review that before we send it out to the community.
Yes.
I'm anxious to see where we fall.
It depends. Like, I was talking to Mary, Windsor has what for a base rate for sewer, $20? But I don't know what their system is.
My wife and I were pretty shocked when we got here from Frederick. The increase that we saw.
For the base rates, or the usage rates, yeah.
Can I ask Spencer, St. Vrain takes care of that? Does that bill through Frederick, or does St. Vrain bill you separately for that?
It was one bill from Frederick.
And that included your sewer? Okay, cause I know St. Vrain is a special district that takes care of the Tri-Town area and some of Meade. And I know when I worked for a special district, we billed that separately, so people said, oh, we don't have much of a sewer bill from Estes Park. No, you don't, because Upper Thompson was billing you for your sewer.
That's how that was in Firestone. We got a bill from St. Vrain.
From St. Vrain?
Separate, yeah.
Okay.
But that was a few months.
I'm talking to Fort Lupton, theirs is higher than ours. So it kind of depends on what kind of system they have, what kind of debt obligation, just like we're talking about now, how are you gonna pay it off, so. But yeah, I'll get that wrapped up the next 2 weeks, so that's okay. I will send it out before the next regular meeting for sure, so I want to get it out there. So what I'll probably do, since we're talking about that, is get it out, ask the mayor to be the point of contact, so we're not gonna be meeting. So funnel your questions back to her, then she and I can work on the final draft to get it out in the utility bill. So we're also gonna put it on next door, put it on the website, announce it on every bridge that we have on the website, so just, probably a mass media, please read this, even though you ignore your utility bill, you have to read this. Because you're gonna, when you open it up, you go from 130 to like $175 a month utility bill, we're gonna get a lot of phone calls. They're wanting to go, I would wanna know why.
It's all about education.
So as far as, not really perpetual care, but water and sewer funds, I mean, we went through that pretty quick, but we're not really doing a lot of changing as far as operations in either one. The bare minimum, the big project is the planning and construction grant, for design, and the sewer fund. Water's pretty nominal. So, I'm gonna go back up real quick. The general fund. Police department. So I bumped this, this is salary for 7 officers, 1 police clerk, and a 3/4 time code officer. I usually, like I said, I usually pad the salaries just because of the overtime potential. I don't want to blow the budget, but feel pretty comfortable next year. And then of course, Matt and Ian are on the escrow side. And then Terry our crossing guard. So if you go to the end of the general fund, I know this gets dizzying, but right now about 58,000 in revenue over expenditures. And then we're going to change a little bit because we're going off year-to-date September financials. So what I really don't, even though we're going to adopt that budget early on December 4th, depending on 2 things, how this next month financials come in, if I see some big jumps or drops, either expenditures or revenues, that may scare me a little bit to hold off on the adoption of the budget. It has to be adopted by December 15th. So what I'm getting at, depending on that aspect, and also Raptellus and when they think they can get us a hard number for the sewer base rate, I may propose to the mayor's special meeting. So because, was it December 3rd or 4th?
4th is the first one.
December 4th, we don't have to officially adopt to the 15th. We've done that in the past, where we've done it like the night before. But we'll just have to wait to see if that's really crucial or not. Just have a special meeting just to adopt the budget. I'd like to have the November financials done and in the budget, and I won't have that done by December 4th. So it's all projections and estimates. So is there any questions on any of the funds so far? What I'm gonna do is pull up the capital project on that chart on the right hand side. This is where I have it. So this is kind of a snapshot. So the general fund, I hardly put anything. Maintenance and conditions, streets and highways, that's our patching budget. Otherwise, the other third for the assist, Cassell transition. The cemetery fund, a couple of projects. Definitely a priority to start surveying and platting the east side of the cemetery. Those stone pillars, if the budget gets a little scary, we just won't do that project. It's not a priority. That's kind of high budget. We try to budget realistically, but I always have something in there that we don't have to do. When I came here, it was my understanding at that time that if you budget a project, you have to complete your project. I don't believe that way. Depends on priority and need and the budget. Conservation Trust Fund. Again, the priority, according to Gordon, is redoing the west ball field infield, the west infield. If you don't, it eventually turns back to sandy soil and weeds, and we don't want that to happen. The Lincoln Park Playground replacement. I threw a number in there based upon what was available in the budget. We really haven't really talked about that. You know, is that going to be a playground? Is that going to be a water feature? What is it going to be? We don't have any hard numbers yet. We can leave that number in there and decide later. So I just went by fund category and just made it just a simple little spreadsheet. Use tax fund. This is 55,000. The last 2 years we budgeted 45,000 to do the improvements around the new park along Sturgeon. Either we can't get bids, or we get too late in the season. It's not a priority at the beginning of the season. The way Dave and I work on these capital projects, and Carl when he's involved with the police department, streets and sidewalks are always first. We bid them out in the late winter, early spring, so we want to get them done from the time school gets out before Harvest Daze. Most time we can do that depending on contractors. And then the other projects we look at throughout the year is like, what is the best timing for them based upon how the budget is stable or not stable.
for this Rogers Park one, I have heard from a couple of different vendors that if we want that work done by late spring, early summer, I need to put that out in November, December this year, so they have it on their schedule.
And to, yeah, to fix the sod that's missing along Circle, but with that, we have to do the sprinklers, because the sprinklers don't.
So whatever happened to the streetlights that were being put up over there?
Was that right?
What happened to those streetlights that they were supposed to install around Circle?
They're still on back order.
We check on them every few weeks. David contacts Connie, Woodward, Excel, and that's the answer we get.
And the last answer I had was 6 weeks ago, and I emailed her last week to get the latest answer, and she hasn't responded to that. So I'm assuming the answer hasn't changed much, or she probably would have let me know.
I think there's 3 lights total that we look over there.
Yeah.
'Cause we're gonna put a Cobra light on the existing pole at the corner of the sewer, then the light at the 32.5 and Circle intersection. We kinda justify the expense of a new light pole, but like she said, you got 3 poles right there that you just put a Cobra on, and the power's right there. So going back to Rogers Farm, I increased it from 45,000 to 55,000 because there are 12 trees along Circle, along phase 1 and 2. For years, we've had complaints of people who live behind that sidewalk of roots tearing up their fence, tearing up the yard. It's getting to the point where the roots are getting big enough where it start bumping our sidewalk. So the concept is to, for about, Todd's working on the estimate for about $6,000 or $7,000, probably cut all 12 out and replant new trees that are more decorative. We'll put trees back. People are gonna not be happy initially, but get the information out there. The people who live right along that stretch of fence, they're gonna be happy.
They're gonna throw a party.
They're gonna throw a party out. Had a lot of complaints the last few years. But, that's part of that process. The new police vehicle new used police vehicle replacement, Carl has on reserve against that patrol. That's also to equip it. Nothing in Harvest Daze, nothing in parks. Cause like the parks fund, without growth, that balance will never change, about 15,000. Storm drains, we put that 20,000 aside, kind of to help match together money needed to do the storm drains improvement with the fire district project along Town Hall. Transportation fund, I actually knocked this down to 140. Which I need to talk to Steve to see if that'll do it, because looking at the fund balance and this transportation fund, another impact fee fund, so the number doesn't change unless there's growth. There's not enough money in there to do the full 150. So that's for survey and design of Reynolds Avenue. So I need to just have a conversation if that's a realistic number.
Troy, for Mr. Plum, can you tell him how we were planning on breaking that down?
Sure.
Please?
I have to give it to you later, Troy, but there's a spreadsheet that Steve Ferris gave to us. And it's roughly 140,000, 150,000 to do the survey at all and design the new Reynolds Avenue project. And then we're looking at phasing it, basically it's over $1 million project. So the second phase was to build, well, it's a storm drain system, and it's not gonna be the recommendation by the storm study, because they're talking about a new pipe of 32.5 out to the river. That alone is $1 million project. So there's that detention pond behind the community center. It's small, but there's a big green open space behind that outfield. Enlarge that detention pond to incorporate that whole area out there. Take the storm water on most of the street. Part of it is enhancing the outlets that the fire department is talking about doing already at Reynolds and Main. And then also looking at enhancing the storm drain over closer to the river. So it's not, the water's not going to go in one spot. So that's going to be phasing 2. And then the last phase would be actually to build a sidewalk along the south side of Reynolds, along the homes, and then pave and curb and gutter. I'll give you that spreadsheet, okay?
Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot. You were in Germany.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're out partying, drinking
That's
all
great.
the beer.
Oktoberfest. Yes.
Veteran Memorial Fund, there's really nothing there. I talked to Penny today, they're scheduling, on November 9th on a Friday in conjunction with the school district, a ceremony, then also on the 11th, Sunday, which is actual Veterans Day, another ceremony with the memorial. I don't know what the fund balance is, but they're getting some good donations, and they just ordered 100 new hats. They're gonna give them out to all the veterans for free on Veterans Day. It's kinda cool, so. But that project is pretty much done. Police impact fee really just, that's where we put that police shed the last few years, and I just took it out. That's gonna be part of the overall site plan for town hall, unless we come up with something temporary and stick between the two dog kennels. We can do that, Carl, if you want to. Well, we'll budget anything right now. Public facility fund right now makes me a little nervous, because this is based upon getting the full 200,000 from the sale of these 3 properties. As you know, last night, Mr. DeVries, I forgot to call him today, I'll call him tomorrow. And he called me yesterday afternoon before the board meeting, and he was in the hospital, so I kind of want to give him a day before I talk to him. His wife's in the hospital, but I'll tell him he has till the 25th, which is about a week away, to come up with at least some pre-qual, you know. Otherwise, we'll bid it back out, or not bid it, but for sale by the town. But without that, these numbers could be impacted. Town hall master site plan, I talked to a contractor, architect that specializes in public facilities, and that's their estimate. I threw in a ballpark number of $100,000. I don't know what it's going to take to give the community center a facelift. New doors, new windows, new floor, new paint. I just don't know. Dave and I need to just go get some numbers from contractors. It'll take some time. Well, workshop expansion, since we're in conjunction with Sun's old shop, David bought a pretty affordable temporary storage container we put out there at the old rock lot by the ball fields. But that's really not a long-term solution. This is these 3 numbers, basically 225,000. That will pretty much wipe out the public facilities fund without new growth. So I wanted to increase the public workshop expansion more, but the fund won't hold it, because right now there's roughly about 50,000 left if we spend all this money. Adding on 2 base to the existing shop is closer to double that number, just so you know. So, but Dave's working with some different contractors. Right now, 150 minimum, 200,000, and that's without probably concrete floor.
The 150 to 200 would include.
That is the concrete.
So,
okay, I stand corrected.
if we were to back, I mean, they gave us some down and dirty numbers. They have not put it all together and spec'd it all out. They're just basing that on an average size, average square foot cost, approximately what they're in. And they said it'd be between 150 and 200 if we chose to, you know, back out the concrete pad. That was 6-inch pad with 4 inches of gravel underneath it. If we chose to just have them do the footers and the walls, and we just leave it gravel floors for now, that kind of thing, we probably could bring that number down a little bit. But you know, if we can go ahead and get a concrete smooth floor in there while we're at it, I'd just as soon get that done all at once if possible, because it's only going to continue to increase the cost to do that too. So,
But that 100,000 isn't going to take care of shop expansion.
no, it would be at least, they told us the minimum bid would be 150, and that was through TCC, the same company that did the senior center fitness room for us and the expansion on, or the upgrade to the restrooms and stuff. They were good to work with. We enjoyed working with them pretty well. When I called American Buildings, who is the manufacturer of the existing shop that we have out back, he gave me a couple of names in Greeley and in Frederick, and I said, well, is TCC one of you? He said, oh yeah. He said, forget the other 2 names I gave you. He said, if you've worked with them and they're willing to come down from Windsor and work with you, he said, I was trying to get you somebody close. But he said, if they're willing to do it, he says, they would come much higher recommended than the other 2 names that he had originally given me.
And as far as the community center, I really don't know. You know, the goal is to replace the 2 double doors, front and back, a single door out the kitchen. I think there's 4 or 5 windows. And to me, that just needs to be an upgrade to match the building plus energy efficiency. The flooring, nothing fancy. you know, just redo the tile. I mean, I talked to Bob Shred, the architect in the senior center, and he said, he talked to, as well as Brian from TCC, the guy that put the tile in the senior center, did an excellent job. He had him look at it, he said, you can actually scratch the existing tile. I mean, he had to cut some edges around the walls, the concrete has kind of settled, and re-pour those, but otherwise, there's basically what he calls it, you scratch it up, and then you can put just a tile straight on top of it, don't have to tear it up. So new baseboard trim, new paint. To me, the carpet is a waste of time in there, so just pretty much tile the whole thing, maybe with some throw rugs, but I just don't know, I don't think it's gonna be $100,000, I could be dead wrong, I don't know.
You think you might be able to move that 100,000 to,
Like,
say, to get you up to the street patching? Is that what you're needing, 150? or
We need the public works
150,000?
shop.
Oh, yeah,
Come
sorry.
up, but I'm still not comfortable with it without the sale of that property.
Yeah.
And the other bids that we got on weren't even close.
Yeah.
If you remember, people didn't wanna pay what we were asking for.
well,
So, we can't count on that money at
There's
all.
several people who wanted to purchase it, but they didn't realize it was for sale. So if we end up having to put it up for sale by owner,
I think we could get close to the 140 asking price, or maybe not the 155, which is not a huge impact.
No,
And honestly, I'm really no rush, I'd like to sell it before the end of the year, but if, I don't know, it just depends.
as long as it's sold sometime, we could just, as soon as it did, take that money.
Absolutely. And we did talk a little bit today about worst case scenario. I don't know if you thought I was joking or not, but of these two big projects, you know, we need to talk about is expanding the Flag Workshop more a priority now, or upgrading that community center? That's a catcher,
yeah.
because I told Dave my opinion that upgrading that community center, if it's not 100,000, it's more like 50 or 60, that'd be my proposal, get that thing done. Because people are looking all the time to rent it, I'm embarrassed the way it looks, to be honest with you, it looks terrible. Especially
It's
so
kind of
there's,
the impression of our town too.
Yeah.
Want to rent it out, they see that.
and that, you know, that's a money maker, you could bring in 6,000 to 8,000 a year on rentals, and if we spruce it up and look at modifying the fees a little bit, the fees are dirt cheap. That we can bring in a little bit more revenue. We won't give it to David, but we'll keep it.
I agree with that sentiment.
The capital improvement fund, a number of items. The admin code vehicle, that's an option. If the finances are good, revenue's coming in good, that'll probably be later in the year. That's not anything crucial right now. Tornado sirens, I think that's a priority. The actual siren estimate is 25,000. I put 10 in for electrical and some other miscellaneous items, which I'm comfortable with. The town hall Main Street storm drainage, that's that 70, the other 20, that's a guesstimate. I'm waiting, I was supposed to have by tonight's meeting a rough estimate of what quote unquote the town share from the fire district property to Grand Avenue would be for the storm drain improvements. I did receive that. So, and the 3 street patching projects, finish up Lincoln over here. Half the street's paved, half of it's dirt and weeds. The Cemetery Hill, it just keeps collapsing. It's not gonna last much longer.
I'm sorry, can we go back to the storm drainage?
Yep, right
For
here.
the fire department?
Yep.
That's what we discussed at the last meeting. So we're putting it in there so we see how it affects our numbers, but we generally, when somebody builds something, if they impact our storm drainage, they pay for it, not us. Or is this different?
This is only from this stretch along Town Hall.
Okay,
This does not include a number
okay,
for Reynolds Avenue, which is what they're wanting us to pay for.
okay.
And this is an estimate kind of from Steve Buthers and David, I walk it saying, okay, from my experience, this is kind of what it looks like it could be.
Okay,
And of course, he always estimates high.
sure.
What is the driver for us to do this project, though?
Well, the storm drain, in order to make it work for the fire district, the storm drain would probably have to be part of the project. To be honest with you. I just don't think the fire department can be built without these improvements being done. Because
So the fire department being built is the reason that we're
We
gonna have
have
to
to
do
pay
this,
this.
right?
That's,
It's gonna affect this whole area.
So,
and part of it, I felt justified saying that, you know, there's water coming from the car wash, from the existing fire station, from these 3 blocks of residential.
Parking lot from our line.
No, that goes down to the Grand Avenue, but part of it does come from over here. From about halfway down, there's an inlet right by the Platte Workshop, and that's where it starts flowing back south to an inlet that's in the grass out here. And it goes to, basically gets its way to the Grand Avenue storm drain that goes out to the river. But from the shop going north, the water flows north to Reynolds Avenue. So I felt the town does have some responsibility. And for this stretch, I thought that was fair, but for the stretch, for the north, like you said, the town's not impacting that. And just to recap this conversation, my argument, and it's not really an argument, but what I'm trying to stand behind to defend the town is that, yes, some of this water is going to this district currently, but there's no problems.
But that's why I'm asking,
There's
is there
no
a problem that causing us to build this sewer drain, or is it mandated because the fire department's getting built, it has to be done?
The new impacts, and engineers have to design things that'll pass state requirements. So they have to design to meet a 100-year flood. Huge event.
Right. It goes back to that.
It goes back to that, so.
And even though they're building over there because they're gonna impact that water somewhat, we need to address it here. So
Yeah,
that's how you guys feel about it, right?
And one aspect of that is between the Harvest Daze property and the shop. Even with the 2-bay expansion, we're basically agreeing that there's about a 60-foot wide stretch of town-owned property we're willing to let them use for detention pond that we can't build on, but it's for their benefit, not ours. So there's multiple factors. I mean, this is a bigger story, but Dave and I have several more conversations to be had, and we're waiting on them to provide some numbers.
so this is in your opinion, this is the one that we should
My
be
opinion,
responsible for?
my opinion, yes.
Okay.
Troy, when we do the public workshop and the new police station, will this be accommodated so it's not gonna have to be upgraded again? This will be big enough to accommodate that disturbance? Or impact, I should say.
The quick answer is yes, because this retention pond would actually curve around behind the fire department over on the storage lot, and it would capture part of the water from public works. And then we designed where the new PD would go, and our parking lot back to Grand Avenue. So,
But would there need to be some more, I guess when that is built, more upgrades engineering for water? Or would this
probably,
accommodate this?
not
Do you
all
think
of
we
it.
can-
We're gonna have to pay some more design costs for when we do town hall site plan.
Okay.
This is just to get the fire district built for their improvements. But
I
Steve,
guess what I was looking at there, if you think you could budget something in there for that, so it can just be a one-time, plan for the expansion of our.
good.
If I can, from basically the north side of Town Hall north, for the most part, is gonna be accommodated between what the fire department is doing on their site. A little bit of our northern water will go to that site. Some of their southern water is gonna come. We're gonna allow them to go over the top of, rather than piping some of theirs around their building and into their retention pond, we're gonna allow it to just gather and go down. They're gonna have to, the ditch will be just a little bit deeper, a little bit wider in order to accommodate that. But in our discussions, they're not taking that water and flowing it all the way around the building and then running it through their retention pond. Thus, they would have had to build their retention pond bigger, or their detention pond bigger, and that kind of thing. The detention pond that will be on the north side of our new bays up there on the public workshop is basically to handle the overflow from a 100-year event that's basically gonna be from the town's north property line south, trying to get into the Grand Avenue. But because the Grand Avenue pipe is already installed, but it's not big enough to handle all those flows, we have to detain them long enough and then let them go at a rate that pipe will handle it flowing out. then basically from the north side of Town Hall going south at that point, we will be able to, and that's where the police station, new building portion, new parking lot, all that will be designed. So there will be additional engineering and figuring out how big the detention pond and that. But I don't think that we're gonna have to do anything else significant. I think we're trying to take all this into account right now, if that answers your question.
Okay.
For this portion of it.
Just this portion, but what I was looking at, eliminate the cost, if you can go in there and accommodate for, we're gonna have an impact there with the new public works building. If you could build that detention pond large enough to only impact it once.
And
rather than
that
go back
is
and
the
have to
case.
Dig it out again, okay.
And that is the case on that north side of the new public works portion. But as far as the portion out here
Yeah.
to the west, and the new
The
police and the
west.
parking lot there, that's all gonna have to go south, and that's gonna take some additional engineering.
Right, okay.
Okay.
You know, this property, I mean, Platteville, we know Platteville's flat, this property alone is really interesting because the water just doesn't really go anywhere. You have to make it go somewhere. And depending on what you build, and I know, we'll have another conversation when Steve and their engineers, we looked at a map that they surveyed in the topo map, what it's called. And Town Hall's elevation is fine, but right now, the way it stands, if we don't do these improvements, the shop is, what, a foot below, 2 feet below Town Hall, and it has potential flood. So that's why I said, I'm willing to ask the board to invest some of this toward this project, because we do have some impacts to it.
Well, that just puts at ease my concern that's what's going on.
Yeah. Again, those 3 small street patching projects. Another related topic, the sidewalk fund. I know when we talked about this 35,000 is basically what would be available next year, once we, what I call pay off the new Grand Avenue sidewalk project. I can't remember who I was talking to the last week or so about this, and it was one of my neighbors. He made it as well as actually Fred next to me. We're talking about projects for some reason. He used to be a commissioner down Telluride County. And a sheriff.
He's a cool guy.
He is. But we're talking about some of the projects he pursued, and he asked me about the sidewalk fund fee, and he knows we did some patching, so long story short. And he goes, what are you gonna do next year? Where are you gonna patch? And I said, well, we're probably, we're looking at investing in that new connection from Town Hall to the fire district. He goes, well, can I give you some advice? And I said, sure. He says, as a citizen, I'm paying this fee, not to a connection for one small project along town government property. So he gave me a different perspective,
Yeah.
I said, well, I don't like to leave a project half done. I like to make the project whole. So, I mean, he made a good point. I thought I'd bring it up because, some people are adamant. It's like, well, why are you using all of our money that you collect throughout the year to build a sidewalk for Town Hall? But that's the perspective it's going to be. So I'm just play devil's advocate. Do I want to do this? Yes, I still do. But it's important to know all sides, at least perspectives. Well, that's one perspective. Again, we can budget that. In the mid-course, the board says, you know what, let's go a different direction next June, July. That's perfectly fine, And I don't know if, depending on the fire district and how far they go, because the last conversation we had, they're gonna break around about February, I think. February, March, depending on how the winter is. They may not be to that point yet. We just don't know. So we could use this for patching and then re-budget for 2020, I don't know.
And Bella Vista could use all.
Bella Vista could take all that. They could take a full year of 70,000 Bella Vista.
Yeah, I was down there recently, and we've got, there's a lot of trees, a lot of root issues. We've got some 3 and 4 inch gaps again on some of those sidewalks.
And I feel like we forget them often.
And this oversized overweight, this is primarily for the bridge repairs. We don't have anything that we know of. We just put money in there just in case there's an inspection and we have some repairs to do. Some years we use it, some years we don't.
Which we did just receive the inspections, but I haven't reviewed them.
Okay. And then we already talked about water and sewer. So, right now, I'm wanting to update, once this budget's final, update the whole capital improvement plan for the community and show them that since the capital improvement fund was established in 2010, technically, the election, the special election in 2009, I'd like to show them all the projects we've done and how many millions and millions of dollars this town has spent for various projects, not just streets or sidewalks, but I think it's important for them to know, you know, the government's trying to do the right thing the best we can with available funds, so.
We give them an idea where their money's going to.
Absolutely, we have to be
It's important
transparent.
to break down what your tax dollars are paying for.
It has to be transparent.
So we discussed earlier lighting in bathrooms for, especially Lincoln Park bathrooms at Riverview as well. Did we get numbers for lighting?
I don't have any numbers yet, I need to still talk to Mike about that.
Okay, this is super dark over there.
It is. And just to go along with that, about a month ago, I had a call from Don Nordgren, Diane's father-in-law. Where he lives on the river, it's a long stretch. Like, I live the next block over in Reed, but I have Shirley Court and Catherine Court with lights. But from Reynolds all the way back to Olive Lane, he said where he lives is pitch black. He asked about a light. And he also brought up the sewer lagoon corner, 32.5 of the circle, and I said, well, that's being taken care of. And then he also brought up coming in on Business 85 off Main Street, so that's pitch black. And I said,
Yes.
okay, well, that one's gonna be a tough one to drill with. So I'm talking about some of the same stuff. So I know that park needs to be improved, definitely,
Right.
because it's pitch black.
So do we need to talk about the money we have at that park?
Well, the money we have at what now, the park?
Yes.
For improvements?
For lighting, yes,
Okay.
35,000.
Oh, exactly, okay, so if you wanna go back to this,
Lincoln Park playground replacement.
yeah, right here, okay?
And we could essentially just work up a design this year on what we want the playground to look like based on some of the discussions we've had about a water feature, right? Couldn't that be the budget? I don't know how much a design for a playground costs.
Well, yeah, I think if we're gonna change it to a splash pad park, I think definitely, well, yeah, to do the project, yeah, but for
No,
design.
just for a design.
Just for the design. And then that would qualify for GoFlow grant, so.
Right, so we did a design, we would take the rest of the funds for lighting improvements.
That makes
Is
sense.
that feasible? Troy, what do you think about that?
Okay. Well, let me put this in and before we finalize this budget, let me talk to Mike and see David would be Mike or would be Excel, would be Connie? We can probably,
It depends on whether it's actually gonna be a street light or is it gonna be a private light like we did.
I think-
The private lights that we added over by the concession stand at the ball fields, those are small street light, or like we put at the Veterans Memorial, or do we want to attempt to get another Excel light or two in that area?
Okay.
That seems like how quickly will the Excel move? I mean, it's kind of, right? Why would you want to do that? Seems like a bad choice.
how if we do this, let's put Lincoln Park lights / playground design. As far as playground design, I can get a pretty good ballpark. We're talking to Ken Cosper, who did Riverview Park, for just a playground ball, he'll give me that for free. As far as the water park feature, I'd have to reach out to, the company Troy reached out to, or you, or I reached out
Just tell them
to.
what you want, and then they'll put it together.
Exactly,
So it don't cost.
do you think they'll charge for that?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. So this would be plenty for a light. Because one thing, I'm glad you brought that up actually, because he put those 2 lights in at the ball field. So those big enough, you think? Kind of like the parking lot lights at the community center?
I think so. I mean, something is better than nothing.
So, one thing, I didn't push it this year just because of budget priorities, but we could use this, if the design for the playground / water feature can be free, use this money for another light at Lincoln Park, and then put the 2 lights down at the dog park and the volleyball pit for security and visibility down there. We have a ton of power down there, like I said, from that old tower. We just have to get the meter put back in and get it in the town's lane.
Carl, what's your opinion on those lights in those areas? Needed?
Yeah, I think so. The more lighting, I think the better.
Lots of bad stuff happens in Lincoln.
Yeah. Happens anywhere there's no lighting, so
Right.
yeah, for Lincoln Park.
That also might be a good investment there for also once the the park gets updated, we'll have the vandals over there just want to lit up too.
Yes, very true.
The part, those trees really make an impact on the lines over there.
Yeah.
You know, Riverview's fine, no problem with Rogers, obviously. That's more private pocket parking than like Cornwall Park. Okay,
Thank you.
no, not a problem. Let me just, if there's anything else on here. I mean, like with the cemetery, the stone pillars, the entrance security gate, eventually I'd like to replace all of that old beat up chain link fence and put it all like black fence or wrought iron, which would make it feel sharp, but to me, the capital fund should not pay for that. The cemetery fund should, or through donations or grant, you know, that, to me, I don't take away from other big projects. I'd love to have a little subdivision going like we did with Rogers Farm with 55 homes, and we come up with another 100,000 to build a, you know, splash pad. It's just, I'm speaking out loud, my thoughts here.
Absolutely. No, and that's the thing with all you new board members. This is the time to speak up now. If
And
there's something that you think needs to be a priority or discussed as a priority, let's get it out on the table now.
And this is just a preliminary draft, final meeting, for, you know, as of right now. Nothing is finalized until after the election. Nothing is finalized formally until December 4th, if not the special meeting. So there's still time opportunity here. So don't feel like this is going to be when the budget can't change. That's not the way it works.
Right.
And I just want to add to when I make comments about growth, I'm not pushing growth. I just know that the comp plan, previous conversation, slow and steady growth is important for sustainability. But right now, we're pretty much maxed out as far as growth in our existing town limits up by the west.
I would like to see us push growth a little bit more, not a lot of growth, personally.
And we'll talk about that property, we talked to the renegotiating there south of Highway 66.
I sent out an email to Ken Bachman, who's a CPA, along with the represents the property, along with the attorney that Ken and I talked to. And I put it back on him to, basically I said it seemed like the property was very encumbered with all the mineral surface use agreements. And if he could provide me more information on the mineral right owners to see what their plans were, and I haven't heard back yet. Okay. So.
That's still an option for.
It's still an option.
If it works out, we could possibly use that for growth, or is it still that lift station issue?
Lift station issue, exactly.
In order to expand our boundaries north, which is where you pretty much said growth is going to happen, unless it's in that field south of 66, do we have to have, how does the annexation process work, I guess, or a synopsis? Can we just tell them, hey, you're part of Platteville now, or do they get their permission?
Annexations are a statutory process. It usually takes about 6 months because there's a series of, remember, Mary, 4 or 5 public, 4 public notices and several public hearings. We can't force annex anything unless we surround them for 5 years or more. But if they want to develop, most developments don't happen in Will County because Will County doesn't want them. They want them to come into a municipality. So if somebody on the north side of town says they want to build a 500 home subdivision, Will County will refuse them. They said, we have an agreement with Town of Platteville, like we do with all municipalities, that you have to talk to them about annexing.
Yeah, we'll send it to the closest municipality first.
Yep. And actually our IGA with Will County, just to stay on the topic, is it's worded in a way where the developer can reach out and talk to the mayor or me, one, either or both, before talking to the board, just to see if it's something the community or the board would be interested in. But not the whole board. You can, and I think this gentleman wants to, that one I have in mind, as long as he's not in town, he hasn't submitted an application, Kenner said, our attorney said legally he can have that conversation. But once he submits an application, you guys gotta step back, it'll follow the staff. It's about a 6-month process. It's $1,300 to annex, along with $50 or $100 per dwelling unit. So that fee can be high or low.
When do you pay that? Who's that paid?
They pay that to the town as a one-time fee. They have to pay for all the system investment and impact fees coming in. I think with just Rogers Farm, because that's when we just updated the impact fee, the 5 instead of 3. We used to have 3 impact fees, we went to 5. We did the study. Gosh, the totality was probably, what, $200,000-300,000 total across all the impact fee funds, I'm guessing?
Oh, I imagine 75 or 80,000 of fees.
Yeah, I think it's even closer to that, closer to 400,000. So that's a small subdivision.
So when you say, in the past, you guys have said that Firestone is always pushing their boundaries and trying to do as big as they can, what are they doing
They go
to
to-
do that? Are they annexing? What is
They
their
could go out 3
utilization?
miles off of their furthest point.
But you can go out farther than 3 miles, but you risk litigation.
The most aggressive one is Barefoot Estates, and that has the potential of bringing in an additional 4,000 homes. And they're still building those out. The urban growth boundary comes up to just literally County Road 23 across the river. It's just a small little section, right across the river on Highway 66. You'll right away you'll see little County Road 23, then you'll see 21, blah blah blah. Now it comes up to that point, so in their master growth plan, they have it scaled out to where they have growth all the way to Platteville across the river. They haven't done anything yet.
So they just have it in their plan, they don't
They have their
actually have
plan.
it as part of Firestone.
Yeah,
They
they're
have to get the people to agree to want the annex into Firestone.
Yeah, there's still a lot of political upheaval in Firestone, I've heard, because they don't still have a permanent town manager. I heard recently that Frederick, their town manager, Annette Leclerc, interesting conversation. There's some new board members. There's a recall, and the recall got defeated. Then they had election, and 3 of the new members that got elected on were part of the recall, and they wanted the mayor gone. So they did a sudden vote one night unannounced to fire the town manager, and it was a 3-3 vote, sorry, it's a 3-2 vote. One of the board members supporting the mayor and the town manager was gone, so they formally fired the manager that night. And the town attorney came back the next day and said, wait, whoa, but by statute, not by statute, but by your own ordinance, in order to terminate or hire a town manager, all 7 must vote. So they had a special meeting. The one that was absent showed up, so then it was a 3-3 tie. The mayor voted to keep Matt, who I know, and Matt said, pound sand.
Yeah.
I'm done. So they're still going through some growing pains, true story, weird.
This is Firestone?
Frederick.
Frederick.
So,
Well, and my understanding is they approach the property owners, if they're willing to come into Firestone, then they annex, right? That's
Yeah,
how they
they-
spot it all over the place?
and then that's part of what was going on down there, that when Matt at CML, I was talking to him between class one day, is he said, it's growing pains. I mean, Mary can tell you in Windsor it's the same thing, that, you have your core group, Platteville has its core group, we have a few people moving in, but when you have massive growth quickly, new ideas, the conversation last night, trailers and RVs. You have a lot of people here saying, like, I moved here because Platteville is a kind of a farm town where they have trailers and RVs and campers. But I have talked to some people who moved in, one specifically in Rogers Farm, because they wanted affordable housing. They lived in Metro Denver. They're used to HOAs. They're used to having neighborhoods kind of manicured. And all of a sudden, it's like, I don't want to see my neighbor's RV. So you're going to have those kind of growing pains. I'm sorry, we're getting off the topic a little bit, but.
No, it all leads back to growth, I didn't want it to go that far.
No.
That it did, but how do we pursue growth if we don't have developers actively coming to us? Do we go to property owners north and say, hey, would you like to become part of Platteville just to expand our town limits so that we have that potential to grow? What does that look like?
Basically, the town could do several things. I mean, we can reach out to the property owners to set up a meeting, the board can do that, or I can do that. Or you can do kind of a public media campaign like Strasburg, Colorado did. It's on the airway, come out to Strasburg. They attract developers and they cut deals, and, they waive impact fees and this and that.
So incentives.
They just do incentives. And I talked to the board years ago about, right now we have a straight pay-as-you-go mentality. we don't touch developers any bricks. But we don't have a budget to really allow that, so.
Right. So what is this, do we need to have a separate study session to address
Yeah.
our growth plan?
I agree.
Could
We have a comp plan, but we really don't have a specific growth plan. I
Could
agree.
we do that in 2019 early on?
Yeah. I love, the staff will tell you, I love study sessions in January, February, and March. Oh, you remember those, don't you?
Another project that we talked about, I'm sure you all mind talking about it, one swoop was that solar, or the power charger. And I don't necessarily wanna do that this year, but did you get a cost analysis from Claude, I believe it was, on that, you know?
Chris Christian, the assistant manager down there, said, they said, don't even go after a grant, cause it really don't pay you anything. He said, you could do a simple one for about $6 grand. That's his opinion. That's his opinion. But, depends if you wanna give it free or if you wanna charge it. And he said, key is location, and he said, before you go in, he said, you might wanna do an analysis or a survey to see if you have any kind of vehicles in Platteville or any interest in Platteville. Cause otherwise, you're not really gonna have any use.
So Zoe said they did that, sorry to interrupt. Zoe, the mayor of Fullerton, said they did
Yeah.
that, they didn't think they had enough, you know, call for it, but they went ahead and built it out anyways, and it's used all the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
Larry had suggested like 4 baskets as a.
yeah, so I had talked to Bill at Fort Vasquez, and he did not think that the History Colorado board would be willing to do something like that, but he thought that there might be potential for a conversation, since it could potentially bring in visitors into the museum.
Right.
Either on the, probably closer to the south parking lot, closer to
Right.
State Patrol rather than the north parking lot on the other side. But
It's
that is.
very small, it's not like it has a big impact.
Right, yeah, like only parking spots, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he didn't wanna paint that out of the option at all. So he thought that was.
So at that price, we don't really have to even budget, and we could find $6,000 to do that next year if we
Well-
decided we wanted to, or?
It's not tricky because it's not technically in town limits.
Yeah, it's not town limits.
So that's tricky.
But that's still on the full list that, actually I have copies of what I just didn't break them out, but I kept all those projects on the list. And one thing in January, we can talk about maybe a specific growth management plan or incentive plan or campaign plan. But also, we really didn't, on this priority list here on the left, we have short, mid, and long term. We really didn't change that. So after we adopt this budget, the senior center's done, that's number one priority, we need to scratch that and bump someone else up there. The water park, you know, so that needs to be updated, we could do that in January. That's not gonna impact this budget, but it needs to be updated every single year, once projects are done.
Certainly.
So, but that's all I have right now, any questions, of course, like I said, this is not final. The last item for tonight is salaries and wages. I don't know if you want to continue with that, or just take a short break first and then move forward to that.
Yes, can we have a brief?
I really don't have a formal presentation on that, it's more of a round table. Okay. Yeah, let's talk more about that.
No, clear all that now.
Because I have a secretary.
I just think it's a way to kind of diversify Platteville's portfolio. And, you know, being on 85, it seems like a perfect place.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have.
Because we know we can't say five dollars.
The batteries are through on the range
I agree.
Road days and water lines, That's kind of how it.
Make sure nobody goes to sleep.
But
while
you
we're-
need to do that during your budget meeting, I'm falling asleep here.
Think you're bold, just.
Appreciate it. charge of useless.
And it's really bad for the too.
So did
But
Yeah,
that-
problem is I don't drink Coke, and I sure don't drink Diet, so. That's all right.
Okay, cool.
No, you said you were hurting on the way home yesterday.
That
You got home
was a
late
mistake.
today?
I went to Mickey D's after the meeting last night.
Oh,
Smart.
Where'd you find one of those between here and Loveland?
Johnstown? I went up County Road 17 because the fries sounded good, and then by the time I got there, the double burger sounded good. And by the time I got home, none of it felt good.
Yeah.
It didn't taste too bad going down, but
Yeah.
oh my.
I still haven't given up hope on AST, I know you guys have, but I'm still holding out.
JVA's been in contact with them. And, we're waiting I may get some more information on Wednesday at our next meeting with JVA as to what AST's proposal to them was.
Because there's still those really some sort of pilot thing happening.
That's AST was supposed to propose the pilot system and
Oh.
see all that, so we're waiting to
Now, they've been running other areas, like did they get pilots online anywhere else in?
Not in colder environment, no. So at this point, it's,
We were their only egg in that basket.
or their primary egg in that basket anyway, so, and you know, even if they end up not being a technology that gets recommended for us, I'm still not opposed to figuring out how to let them go ahead and run their pilot here, because if it looks like the technology would work, even if we can't take advantage of it, but another community that gets in the same boat we are in 3 years,
Right.
but they've been able to prove their technology, prove that it works, get through the state process, and that's JVA's biggest hang up with them, is that they haven't even started the state process for approvals. So that can be a 2 to 3 year process in and of itself, and so JVA is like, how can we recommend this when we've got to be built in 4 years, when they may or may not have state approvals before we even have to be under construction, so how do we design for that? You know, so I'm, at this point, I'm pretty confident that AST isn't gonna be the recommended technology unless some of the other technologies have come back and said, you know what, we can go on the tail end of the lagoon and get you all the treatment that you need. And AST is able to match that. And then they might be, but I don't think that's the way JVA is leaning.
Similar technologies to upgrade our house.
There are some, but pretty much any of the technologies you could shrink and put on the tail end of the lagoon, and just take our effluent that's already been treated through the lagoon and then just try it. But the expense of doing that versus the benefit of just putting in a big enough process to do the whole thing versus trying to continue to run the lagoon and a partial mechanical system, probably isn't worth the headache or the land mass.
Yeah, you know what your goals are, man.
No, it's a very
That.
tough task. Like, I think if the economy stays good, it's low, and it doesn't pass, things moving along, then it makes sense.
Nothing there, so there's a installation, and it's, the studies and that, you know.
Stay rapid on top of the installation.
If it doesn't,
Like put
it
tie
does
back over.
pass,
Yeah, so I've got that, and then the siding, so now I've got to get barrier now.
then our budget.
And with the new window, I'm hoping, you know, my gas bill's gonna be.
We need to start thinking about.
Yeah. We're, it's noticeable on ours too.
Yeah, I don't think, the state isn't gonna let us make it work.
No.
So.
Well, we can change, as long as we were to
Nice
change
cool
our.
winds coming from that northeast.
Oh, as long as we meet the new permit by the end of that time frame. So yes, if we, you know, is it possible to do that without going fully mechanized? Maybe.
can't see a hole.
But I think
Either through
unfortunately,
the
for the most
plug
part, it's gonna
outlet
show,
or
even
something through
if we
underneath.
could do that,
And
the
then it was
phosphorus
just coming through the
portion of it
siding, past the
is
whole
probably gonna be in the
plywood,
next
right in the
permit.
house. That's why we can never keep them warm.
And so, even if the technology can meet this permit, it probably won't meet the phosphorus
And then high
permit.
vector on top of it's that same scenario, but you put anything beside plywood, siding.
Right.
And there's no barrier.
So if that comes
And
then,
another addition, a new 4-year land potentially.
depends on what they give us, yeah, they may say, you know, I mean, right now, JVA is asking
Yeah, mine was built in 2000.
for the part of their RFP was to meet the phosphorus permit as well. The one that we know is
We've
coming.
been doing all this.
You know,
I took all the board announced it already.
Yeah, and part of what they're doing with that
And they're
is,
using no master bath.
if you
You know, for different companies, so I.
when is that
took
coming
that door
in?
out, closed it up, and then
2028,
did that whole wall
I
for the
think, is
vanity.
half
Yeah, so I did that,
phosphorus.
and that way, it's my bathroom.
Yeah.
You go here.
How much?
2027 or 2028,
How
so-
drastic of
So, yeah, we were just doing a lot of stuff.
We're, we have phosphorus now.
We don't have a limit.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we're meeting it, because we don't have a limit. We have to get to one or less than one. And I'm trying to think if I even measure anything that's got phosphorus in it. I have to know the reg 85, I think I might have a phosphorus in there, some of the reg 85 numbers.
I'm so done with living in that house, especially with having kids.
Yeah.
But
Proud, beautiful project.
if
Why I
you
just
get,
Oh no, what are you
if
kids
you
got?
get phosphorus,
Destroying everything I
you
just
jump
built.
on board sooner than the required deadline, then you start building up some credits. So then you can be at a higher level for longer before you have to meet the less than one.
Oh.
Because if you start meeting it sooner, then they give you credits, so then say you're at four,
It's solid.
Tight, yeah.
and
Stood
instead
up,
of
did
10,
this,
because
I
you're
did
doing
this,
some
I did
treatment,
that.
but not full
I know.
treatment to one.
Yeah.
But
I
you
got it
were
in
at
there.
10, you're at 4, so you get the
That was
6
tight.
credits for
Yeah.
3 years, so then your deadline is extended from 2027 or
Yeah, so I
2028
told
to say
my wife, I'm not
2031
doing any more house projects.
before you have to meet the
Yeah.
one, so depending on how we build our plant. So part of what they're looking at is getting us the maximum number of credits, so maybe we get down to some phosphorus treatment, but we extend how long we have before we have to really, so if nothing else, it might save us on the operational costs, because for phosphorus, there's additional chemical feed, because the additional stuff like that you have to do to help pull that out.
Okay. And the main phosphorus comes from urine only and from fertilizer. How does fertilizer enter into our sewage system?
Now, some of it is runoff. You have a certain amount of infiltration, iodine is what they call it, infiltration inflow. We get a certain amount of that during a storm event or something like that that goes into.
So storm goes
Colorado
through sewer?
We have storm sewers, but you have a certain amount. We also have people that have they're not supposed to, but they're, every time you have
And
a
the
storm,
economy
the
doing so well.
flows go up.
It's our road.
There are people with sump pumps in their basement that are connected to
Use the
the
money we
sewer.
do already to fix our roads.
But there really, in a perfect world, there really shouldn't be too many fertilizer that can get into the system.
I usually do.
So majority of it.
Pick up some hours.
But we're getting, we're getting more and more
Got a bunch of
concentrated,
people over on Sunday.
because the low flush toilets, you know, the joke in the sanitary sewer world is the solution to pollution is dilution. I mean, up in,
Yeah, so I took Monday off.
where's the original Bojo's Pizza? What little community? Idaho Springs. They have water lines that are close to the surface, they're on the north side of the hill, they get a lot of snow, they have a lot of frost, so they have a lot of people turn heaters on in the wintertime to keep
It
their
never
water
happens
system
during
from
the week,
freezing up,
ever.
because as long as the water's moving, it won't freeze.
That's just Murphy's Law.
their wastewater treatment plant actually meets their effluent limit as it comes into the treatment plant because it's so diluted. But they just strain the chunks and put it back in the river.
How hard is it to separate phosphorus off?
You must enjoy it.
Cause I've heard,
I'm a shitologist by trade, you know what I mean?
It dates back like 12.
I've heard the story on NPR a
And the whole
couple
thing
times
is
now where people are harvesting phosphorus, essentially people would pee in buckets and collect it, and then they turn it into fertilizer.
Doesn't shock me.
How hard is it to separate the phosphorus out?
That's a great question. It's all a chemical thing, and I am not a chemical
Not
engineer.
easy.
No.
Thank you, David.
Sure. Did you pass that easy reading along there?
I did, somebody's stalling here.
I just don't, you know, don't ignore it, the upcoming
I'm just
conversation.
waiting for this all night. I'm assuming it's a different company that cleans your water tanks that scoops it out of the nest.
So, at least they wash.
They would have to pay me extra.
Or they do the water tanks first.
You hope so, yes.
Hopefully they're priors.
They said they sprayed them down with chlorine, but it didn't suits off.
Yeah.
Tide pods.
They can swallow them.
They don't have to disinfect themselves before they go into the lagoons.
No.
They do the tanks.
Just wiped off those flushable wipes they found.
Moving on to a better topic.
There you go.
To shut the screen off, because I really don't have anything on this topic, so just to go into it, like I said, I brought up at the very beginning with capital projects. Over previous years, just in my perspective, it's always been a percent conversation based upon budget. In the 15 years I've been here, I think the biggest increase is when the town back in '05 had a consultant come in. I remember it was a $5,000 fee for a consultant. He did a statewide cost comparison salary survey, and that's when the board gave some real big bumps. I think police department got 5 to 10%, and I know Nick, the town manager, had a big bump. I don't know exact details. There's been a couple of years over the years we've got 0%. One year we got 1%. In the last few years, I know June, there was a kind of mid-year increase because nothing was given at the beginning of the year. Previous year, if I recall, there was $1 across the board for police employee works hourly people, not department heads or myself. And 3 years ago, I don't recall this specific conversation. I just don't write those conversations down. I focus on the overall budget. Maybe I should, but that's kind of a little synopsis for the new board members. I know when we last talked, there was a conversation amongst the board, I'm kind of facilitating here, about setting something in place for the annual conversation, if you will, remains kind of like the whole budget process. You know, we're talking, we're negotiating, we're trying to prioritize, and I know there's talk about setting some kind of base standard, and I don't know all the ideas out there, but for cost of living, whatever you want to call it, then maybe potentially, depending on the budget, the economy, an additional percentage or increase, whatever that may be. Right now, the way the budget stands in the general fund, and part of the fees come out of water sewer because of Public Works, there's around $58,000–$60,000 revenue or expenditures as we speak, and that's going to be changed, obviously, because we're not done with the process. So, I don't know how you want to start, Mayor, or what your thoughts were, your roundtable on thoughts with the board members, or whatever you want to do. I don't have any agenda for this conversation.
Okay, well, I was kind of wanting you asked the board for tools to do your job. And part of your tools is, you know, your employees, that's one of your tools, compensation for them, so on and so forth. Whether they need saws or, you know, a new street or so on and so forth. So I kinda wanted to start with your idea, your thoughts, and then move around the room,
Okay.
please.
Sure, as you will know, you've been on the board long enough, some years the board asks me, sometimes they don't. I do look at the numbers, and I told Adrian, we had just a brief conversation, as town manager, I've got multiple priorities, but when it comes to budget, number one, I have to maintain a balanced budget, regardless. So that's priority number one. Priority number two, I told the board over the years that the biggest asset for the town of Platteville government are these guys. They do the work. So it's not just about buying shovels and backhoes and paved streets. You can, many conversations over comparables, to oil and gas guys, to business guys, so on and so forth. To me, when I lose employees, and I'm trying to answer everybody's from just by myself.
Yep, absolutely.
When admin people come and go, public works come and go, they don't always, rarely do they go to other government jobs. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Police, that's what they do. They go to other towns, they pay more money. They stay in government, they stay in law enforcement. So it's kind of hard to analyze in a black and white scenario, if you will. Looking at that salary survey that was given to you early on, here's my thoughts. I mean, is this a year kind of going back to 2005? Or is the budget sustainable to where we do those adjustments, not just a percentage, but adjustment to get us comparable? Because I guarantee you, I don't have the facts, but I guarantee you, every one of those other towns will give some kind of raise. So if you give like a 1-2% raise, we will still stay behind those other towns. That's just my theory, okay? I'm not pushing for a huge jump by any means. I want to sustain the budget. But just looking at numbers, I just scratched them out today to work on the budget. Right now, because part of it was, what is the salaries and benefits compared to the overall budget? Right now, based on my calculations, with benefits, it's about 50-50. 50% of salaries and benefits is about the total operating budget. So about 1.25 million in total operating budget, about 2.46, rough numbers, but not exact by any means. That was one thought that came across. A lot of towns have talked about, and even private corporations, that your salaries and benefits for your organization should be at least 50 to 60%. Adrian, you and I talked about that. Of your capital budget. That's not everybody's philosophy. This budget, based upon what's available today, could hold up to, I'm not making a recommendation, just giving some facts here, it could hold up to a 4.5% to 5% increase for all employees across the board, just on whole numbers. Okay. As far as my recommendation to you, I think on the library to a minimum 3% is fair. Looking at crunching numbers with the lowest paid employee and the highest paid employee, of course, you know the math. The more you make, that percentage is bigger, the less. In previous years, department heads haven't received anything. We focus on hourly employees. I would ask the board to focus on hourly and salary employees this year, whatever that may be. Because David and Mary and Reggie and Carl, they're the ones that have to oversee. They have the biggest responsibility. That's why they get paid more. That's just the way my perspective is. They're liable for everything their employees do. I'm liable for them. So that's kind of my black and white. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
So you would prefer to see a percent increase versus like $1 for everyone, right? Because at that rate, you hit the people who make less a little bit harder than you do the people who make more, right?
Exactly, and you can.
Which I kind of like that portion. I like that portion of it, I guess. The people making less receive a little bit more.
And you can do a flat rate increase for hourly and a percent for employees, or you can do a percent for both, just make the percent for the hourly wages higher than the salary wages. I mean, just as an option, but that's one perspective.
Wasn't the last year we gave you like 20,000 for you to divvy out who you thought it should go to and how much increase that they should have?
And that averages out to about 45 cents per employee. Some got higher, but the average is about
Based on
45.
merit, right?
And that,
Some
yes.
were based on merit.
And I'm just saying, I'm retweaking the evaluations, which will be done next month. I just don't like them. They're not, they kind of, in most towns have similar style evaluation like we do. Because you can't get personal, and you can't segregate officers versus public works or admin, so you have to be consistent across the board. So, having the basic, yes, you're consistent, you don't take a lot of sick time, blah, 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 you do good work, that's part of it, but you also have to have a merit type of questionnaire evaluation to go along with that. And that's one thing I'm trying to build into this year, I just haven't got it done yet. To where if the board says, okay, Troy, you get 5%, and we did this years ago, Nick, where the board gave, see, we'll get to 4%, so the total evaluations is a 4-point scale. And if you got a 3 on your 4-point scale, you only got 3%. But if you're a really good worker, you got the full 4%. That never worked out because unless 4% is giving every year, that I was trying to do mathematical equations to adjust those numbers because it doesn't, the math doesn't add up. So, you know, that's one thing we tried, it just didn't work. I'm open to any questions you have.
I want to, so this was, the 20,000 was money we had left over from a street project, I believe. And it was, I think in May, April or May, and it was discussed at the time that this is money left over, we're going to give it to our employees, and it was a one-time thing.
And there hadn't been a raise for 2018, so that was going to cover 2018's raise.
Right, and we were going to talk about Mr. Rankin when we have this discussion as well. I don't know if you wanna do that in executive order or not, or an executive session or not, Troy, but that needs to.
So what's your guys' feeling then? Do you wanna do 1%? Do you wanna do nothing? What's everyone?
That 20,000 last year, now,
It was
that's
this
not
year.
available, or for this year.
It was
It's not
in
available, so will they get a decrease in pay then because it's not there now?
No, no,
Oh, it's still,
right,
It's,
right.
it's still, there's part of their salary.
right,
Yeah.
okay.
Doesn't-
It made it sound like that was
It was a
$20,000
one-time,
left over.
right, it was.
Just a one-time thing and then after it goes back, but
Yes,
it
I
stays
didn't
the
make that
same.
confusing, no, sorry.
Yeah, it wasn't a bonus, it was just
Yes.
added to their salary and it's still built into their salary.
Okay, so it's still budgeted in.
Yes.
Yes, right.
Because so we can't forget about the longevity benefit too, that every year somebody stays longer, they get more money. So we have to figure that into their raise also, because that was, something that we decided to give the employees to help compensate their health insurance. Did we change that? Were they able to do, did we decide they were able to do anything besides the health insurance with that?
No, they still have to be on the town's health insurance, and that's what standard, we weren't big. Most health insurance companies need an 80% participation rate, and we were having a struggle getting that several years ago. So the board at the time established longevity benefits to entice employees to stay, not just to stay with the town, which is a benefit because of the skill set and the knowledge they have, but it was tied into, you had to be on the town's health insurance policy.
When we didn't change that policy, that they could have it anyway.
I thought we changed that.
I thought we had the
We
discussion.
talked about it, about
They-
for like
they-
education and some other things.
Well, what was changed is that before this last year, that the longevity could only go toward health or other defined plans like dental or 401k. The board changed it to where if someone's single, they're on the town's health insurance policy, but they've been here to qualify. They can take that cash out, they can buy it toward college. There's more flexibility in how they can use it. That's how it was changed last year.
Okay, that's what I thought we did.
But it's still tied to healthcare.
Ultimately, that program is just to entice the employees so that we can obey the law and provide them health insurance, right? Because if they don't, we have to provide a plan for our full-time employees.
That's not why we gave it to them. We gave it to them because they couldn't afford.
That was another big aspect of it.
They couldn't afford the health insurance, because it keeps going up and the health insurance that we're on is just you know, too much, so we did this to offset, so if it was a family, they'd have at least, you know, what was the max for 10 years?
600.
600, so from 600 on down, they could apply that to their health insurance, so they could afford it, that's how we looked at it, so they could. But still, every year, that's gonna raise up, so it's not that they're not getting them, I'm not saying that this should be in place besides giving them a raise, but I need to make sure you understand that as long as they stay here, their pay also increases.
Correct, is the change in longevity, reflected in the budget currently? Lois?
I haven't calculated who's
Moving up?
who's moving up, I haven't done that yet. David Green does that.
Okay.
Is there a cap?
Well,
Like on a certain
600,
position?
600 at 10 years.
It's 3 years qualified for
Month.
200 after 3 years. 5 years is 350. Correct me if I'm wrong. 7 years is 500. Then after 10 years is 600.
Then that's that cap right there.
And it's
Yes.
capped, and that has not been increased. And I did look, just out of curiosity, because it ties into health insurance. The health insurance this year was 7.9, last year was 4.4%. And I can't remember the previous 2 years, but overall it was about a 20% increase in health insurance. So the health insurance system longevity is built in, has increased by 20%, but longevity doesn't. So it depends on how you look at it. I mean, there is talk about the longevity increasing when it's only health insurance, nothing else, the same rate as health insurance, but that was all changed. Because somebody doesn't have to use it for health insurance if they're single, they can use it for whatever.
Right.
Because,
Larry?
Okay, I've been looking into a number of possibilities. But first I would, for those who don't know this, Social Security Administration announced their cost of living raise for 2019 at 2.8%. Just in passing, the Social Security Administration comes to that number by using the most conservative statistics available. It's really not an accurate reflection of the Consumer Price Index or any other measure. That those percentages are lower than the actual cost of living increase. But I'll mention the 2.8 just as a starting point for a potential policy. I know in previous years, some of the conversations about employee compensation raises have been rather contentious, I'll say, on this board. And it would be my recommendation that a policy is reduced to writing for several reasons. Number one, the employees would be able to see ahead of time what the salary structure is likely to be from one year to the next. It avoids the annual, or in some cases semi-annual, battleground here among the board about employee salaries. That said, my personal preference is to have the 2.8% apply across the board to department heads and employees alike. My initial calculations come out to that 1% increase is in the neighborhood of $12,500 to $14,000 per percentage increase. So if you do it, let's say 13,000. If you do a 3% across the board increase, it's going to cost the town $39,000. It's not all salary. Some of it's Medicaid, some of it's PARA, the Public Employees Retirement Act, some of it is workman's comp. Some of the components of the salary, total cost of salary, are affected by the increase. Some are not. Insurance, for instance, health insurance, that doesn't go up because your wages go up. But your contribution to your retirement goes up, workman's comp goes up. So just as a ballpark number, 1% per, $13,000 per 1%. And so the board has a number that they can plug into the budget. Beyond, well, additionally, it would be, I think, a positive thing to have this policy in a written form. You may want to put an escape clause in it if, for instance, 112 goes south, the economy goes south some year, so that you can say, we don't have the money this year to give you the cost of living increase, or we don't have it all. But at least it would be the policy could read that it's the intention of the board to increase salaries based on the Social Security cost of living formula at a minimum annually, without obligating yourself to that every year. We walk a tightrope with a budget every year. There's a lot of moving parts that can go south in a hurry, whether it's property tax, whether it's severance tax, on and on and on, through sales tax, and all the numbers we've been looking at for a couple of weeks now. But a policy that at least is an expression of the will or the intent of the board to treat the employees with the cost of living to the fullest extent possible every year. In addition to that, because we're, as Troy pointed out, not necessarily competitive with salaries in other towns, an additional, and I'll just use this as an example, another 1.2% to be distributed among non-department heads, which raises the lowest salaries in addition to the cost of living, would be my preference. I'll put it that way. So a total of 4%, 52,000. It fits in the budget this year. But more so than that, some type of written intent policy, I think, would make the employees be able to look forward to future service and know that they're appreciated. They're, as Troy points out, they're the ones who do the work here. They're the ones that run the shovels, plow the snow. And we're blessed with a talented and loyal staff, and they need to be rewarded accordingly. I'll
Which is
stop
done
there.
through the longevity. Which is done through the longevity.
Well, that's an additional measure of that, yes.
It still includes, it still goes into their salary. You
It
can't
does.
ignore that.
I'm not
That goes
ignoring.
along with the health benefits also. That all includes into your salary.
But we're not increasing that at all.
Every year they stay, they get increased up until 10 years. So every year they get an increase. Am I correct? The longer they stay, or every 2 years, they get an increase. So it's not like they don't get an increase.
Yeah, but in water, we got a cost of living increase, we also got our 2 year, 6 year.
Right, and that depends on the money you have too. I was one of the board members that didn't like to give out raises, you know, I'm one of them. I can't speak for the past board members that didn't wanna do it. I had no problem giving the department heads a raise at all. I think they go beyond their duties to take care of this town. I had no problem with the employees. Now under Carl, the police department is increasing their citations, which is commendable, because before you took it, they were only right, of all the police officers we had, there was only 39 tickets written in a month. That's not even one ticket an officer. Now it's increased, and this is big coming from me, but I would go for a 4% increase. I never did that before, so I wouldn't mind giving the employees a 4% increase.
So is everybody okay if we look at policy as a separate study session to be scheduled, and then we talk about budget, the salary increase tonight for our 2019 budget, and then we move forward with our policy later?
I think it might be a good idea, Mayor, because of the election, like Larry indicated, maybe.
I think it'd be prudent to wait until
wait on the
after the
policy.
election results are
Just
in.
wait on the policy, then also look at, Larry brought up Social Security, I'm just throwing this out there, maybe someone else has another factor, baseline that they may wanna look at, I don't know.
Right, and just because we have a policy that, you know, would set a certain percent, doesn't mean, you know, the board, the extra revenues came in, and for this 1 year, we're gonna discuss giving out an extra X number, you know, X amount of money. Right, policy wouldn't hinder that, but, so I'm hearing two arguments for 4%.
Well, the military this year, January, we'll get a 2.4%, so times are good and the economy's doing good, so we're getting better increases, so. And
Well,
hopefully
another possibility, just as I think about it, is, I know it was asked of me, and something we should consider when we give annual raises, whether, no matter how you formulate it, you wanna be able to feel comfortable that you'll be able to continue those salaries in the future. Well, there's too many variables in the town's income to guarantee that from 1 year to the next. But another way to reward the employees without obligating yourself to an increased salary the following year, if you find yourselves, let's say this time next year, some capital project came in, the bid was $25,000 under what we expected, or what was budgeted, the same way, essentially what happened last year. You can distribute that as a one-time Christmas bonus, if you will. But it's not part of the following year's salary. It's just distributing a surplus funds to the employees on a one-time basis, one-time only basis, theoretically. I mean, it may happen the following year as well, but you're not obligating yourself to paying that money again the following year. It's just a bonus. It's another way to reward the employees and still have a flexible policy and a budget. I think you all get the drift right.
And just so you know, the town attorney will require that there's the budget appropriations requirement in your policy, just like it is in any contract. That way it's your out. If the budget isn't there, you can't do it or you won't do it.
Well, we can talk about, tying into revenues too.
Sure.
Well, I think the employees would understand not getting as much next year as they did this year if they're able to look at the books and say, you know, we took a $300,000 hit in the sales tax, and that's why you're not getting as big a raise next year. You know, but you want to be able to have that out as well. I mean, if you're gonna, some of it is, for me, is motivated by the fact that some of these previous salary discussions were rather contentious meetings. And that doesn't need to happen. I'd like to think that we take this job seriously and can do it with respect for each other and respect for the town and what we're here for. To have it in a more solidified policy, almost reduced to writing, it eliminates all those squabbles, I'll use that word for lack of a better one. And it also gives the employees the insight of what they are going to can reasonably expect in the years to come. That it's at least our intent to have these cost of living raises that are based on some formula that's available to us.
So I have a question with Social Security. What does previous years look like?
Nothing.
Last year was 1.7. The year before that was 0. The year before that, I think it was 0.8%.
Yeah, it wasn't very much.
No, well, Chris, they've changed the way they come up with a formula. They've used the most conservative numbers they could find. That again, they're not reflective of the consumer price index. They're lower than that. They're lower than the inflation rate that the Federal Reserve announces. Because they juggle the numbers.
Sure,
You know, they take certain statistics and refuse to use those in the formulation of their COLA adjustment. But, I mean, I just use that number because it comes out every year, this time of year. It just came out 10 days ago or less. For all Social Security recipients effective the first of the year. So that it would be a number it's public information.
Yeah.
It would come to the board at this time of the year, every year, while we're in conversation about our own budget. So you would know what that number is. You could look at the reserve funds or the income, the balance sheets of our accounts, and know how well it fits in or doesn't, as the case may be. So the timing is perfect in that regard.
Okay. So Troy, I'm sorry, you said 2.4% is what you're looking at for military?
Right.
Okay.
So when I saw the 2.8 last week, I was like, whoa, they got better than we did. So.
Yeah, but I do less than you do.
That's all. I like the, you know, what Larry's thought process and having a policy, because it is really frustrating. This is the third year being on the board, and every time the salary increase come up, it's really contentious, and it shouldn't be that way. I think we do need to have something so that the employees do have some retention to look forward to retain them, with know that they're gonna, if they continue to stay with our town and you know, do good work here, that they're gonna be rewarded for staying on and have that increase there, because everything's getting, you know, inflation's gonna keep on going up. So I would agree with what Hope and Larry discussed already.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Spencer? Anything to add?
I agree with the policy discussion at a later date and the structure that Larry put together with the 2.8 across the board and the 1.4, 1.2 to the hourly employees would be my preference.
Yeah.
I'm pretty well on the lines of that too.
Okay. Harold? Alright, so 2.8. Now, Troy had talked about bringing our,
For total.
yeah, our salary
Right.
basis up. What is everyone's opinion on that? The salary basis?
So just like one-time jumps, just bring the numbers up, not in a percentage, just okay, the Eaton Public Works guy makes this, and we make 20,000 less, do we wanna give them 5,000 to?
Yeah, but we gotta, take
We-
consideration
we
that
don't
our
have
budget's
to-
not as big as theirs.
Yeah.
No, sorry,
You know,
I'm
so
not,
we can't
I'm
give
not
them that
proposing
big of
that,
a
I'm just
raise.
explaining the
Right.
conversation that we're about to have.
Would it be better to go that way or percentage?
I think
For
it's
an
a
increase.
I think it's a two-part thing. I think the percentage increase is a inflation thing, and this bump it up is just to make us competitive with other towns.
So,
Do the bump up too,
are we giving
still
the
be
department
competitive
heads the 4% raise plus?
That's what I was just gonna ask, so if we do 2.8% across the board, and the 1.2% for hourly employees, and then department heads bump them up?
But what are we gonna bump them up to?
Because we've
The
already.
average of all
already
these
given-
communities?
I
Or-
think we are opening up ourselves to a contentious conversation. Unless Mr. Rankin really wants us to do this,
No,
I'm more comfortable with the
it's-
2.8 and 1.2 and.
My suggestion on the salary adjustments was just the salary adjustments, no percentage.
Right.
Right.
So if you, 'cause there's several things that have been discussed, okay? From my understanding, the board wants to give the hourly employees a little bit more than the salary employees. Okay?
No,
Then, that was one perception I took.
right.
I did throw out there that instead of the percentage, could this be the year that we do adjustments across the board? Not just for salary, but for hourly.
And do you have proposals for those adjustments?
I don't have exact numbers. I mean, we used to really look at that comparison sheet with other towns, and that was part of the conversation the last few years. That's kind of gone by the wayside. But we still track that, because that matters to me, because that's where, especially out of those cops.
The employees track it.
Of course,
So it
they
would
talk.
be prudent for us to.
But to me, the biggest impact over the years I've been here in any place is law enforcement. 'Cause these are the agencies, especially the smaller ones that that started up, like Garden City, Hudson, Meade. They'll tell you, they're stealing officers. We've already lost officers. They just about say, you know what, come work for me, I'm gonna give you 10,000 more a year and a cop car. That's the way life is in law enforcement. Public Works, sometimes guys leave for bigger towns, do the same job, sometimes they go into another career. It's hard to tell, same with admin.
Sure.
But to answer your question, I'm not asking for both. I don't wanna muddy the waters. You can't do both. That's not fair. So it depends on you this year. If you feel comfortable with the budget, I'll give you my honest opinion. Either you take a look at the comparables with the other communities and say, okay, average them all up, and are the employees 5%, 10% below average? Maybe that could be a consideration, just to give them the average of the comparables. That might be a fair solution.
Well, if you're gonna compare the cities or the towns,
And-
I also wanna include their budget.
Well, that's true.
I wouldn't mind doing that too, because I look at, just as my town manager, Kersey's half the size of Platteville, and he makes 8,000 more than I do, so I like to have his salary, and his budget's more than mine. So you have to look at it in different ways.
have all these happy smiling faces.
I know.
At least $10,000 here.
It's my pill time, guys.
You never bring something barrel down.
Wolf Valley.
But yeah, I don't want to muddy the waters. You gotta do one or the other. It can't be both. It's not gonna
We
work.
can't give both the
Can't do both.
department heads and the
I think
hourly, we can't give them both a new raise.
salary.
No. If you're gonna do pay adjustments and bump them up to a
So,
range,
what
that's
I-
pay adjustments.
What I was saying
Right.
is 2.8 across the board, everyone gets it.
Right.
1.2 goes to hourly employees.
On top of the 2.8.
Correct.
Correct, and then, adjustments for different increases for salaried employees. And just department heads, you four here are salary, correct?
And Reggie.
And Reggie.
My recommendation, just to make it clear,
Yeah.
if you're going to do adjustments for salary people on a bump, not a percentage, do just that for the salary people.
And not the 2.8.
Exactly. And give the hourly people their full 4%.
But then you're gonna kinda kill two birds with one stone. It gives the not the illusion or impression, but you get an increase of pay for your cost of living expenses, then also be more competitive with
For the
those
hourly.
towns.
Correct.
For the hourly people.
For hourly people.
But doesn't the
I was talking about across the board.
2.8% across the board, I mean, it applies to department heads.
Well,
And that makes their salaries more competitive or more in line with other towns, does it not?
well, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but if you say you give me 2.8%, then you look at me competitively, it's like, okay, Kersey makes this, Fort Worth makes this, okay, we're gonna raise you $4,000. I mean, that's great for me, but to me, that's not fair to the hourly employees, because you're giving me way more than 2.4%, you're giving me whatever percent that may be.
Well, wait a minute.
So-
You're doing, your responsibility is a lot more than the hourly
Yeah.
employees.
Well,
You,
If you
no,
wanna
that's
do
not
it,
even a
great.
comparison.
Granted, they can't work without you guys.
Right.
I mean, that's the tiered system. I mean, they're the ones that are executing the work that you guys are assigning and organizing and budgeting, where there's a lot more responsibility and weight on your shoulders than
and I
theirs.
agree, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
So what if your annual salary ends up being less than the increase ends up being less than 2.8%?
Well, then let's figure out what 2.8% is and if it's,
It guarantees you.
Because honestly, in my opinion, and this is the reason why I started this conversation, looking at that initially, pay adjustments comparable to other communities, 2.8% won't get you to the median.
You should probably start looking at Frederick to make sure you're not looking over that town.
I haven't applied yet,
How
Matt.
competitive are they?
Matt just lost his job, I haven't applied yet.
you better, we'll make it over there.
I just shackled the town hall, we're not leaving.
And you're right, Larry, I mean, I'm not putting away 2.8% either, or these to my left, but to me, a salary adjustment's not a 0.5%. I mean, if you look at this, and depending on how you do this, the key is how do you do the salary adjustments to be comparable, that's a factor. Because we did that before, years ago, remember that, Hope?
Mm-hmm.
And I know when Mike was a police chief, he bumped up like $6 grand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was given a percent increase?
No, you gotta pay adjustment for comparable wages for other police chiefs. So that's
So
what I'm
we'd
getting.
have us treat the department heads under a separate formula aside from what I mentioned earlier.
It could be better, I don't know, it depends.
We can look at it
But
both
it would be a
ways.
dollar amount and not necessarily a percentage. It
To
would be,
me, a pay adjustment is a dollar amount, it's not a percentage.
okay, I'm just trying to understand what you're telling me.
Yeah, sorry, Larry.
That's all right.
Not bad for all of us.
I don't know.
And then you're done, yeah.
Are we gonna reduce this to a separate study session, is that what I was hearing, or we're trying to resolve this?
Yeah, we want to discuss this after
After the election.
elections, yeah. I mean, decide in stone, or we discuss it and finalize it here now?
Yeah, I don't think it'd be prudent to do anything until after the result of the elections, myself.
Definitely, I mean, I really don't know, if you're gonna do a percentage, I anticipate that could be decided by working the budget. But if you're looking at doing pay adjustments, I can't disagree with Larry, because that could change the budget significantly more.
Right.
I wait till after November 6th.
Well, looking at the,
Again, I have to manage the budget, I have to have a balanced budget.
I think we're not far off as far as what all the other communities are paying, the department heads and the employees here, based off of this year. I mean, there might be $2,000 to $2,000 on one position, but most of it's like right in balance.
You all get a copy of that? Wait, are you looking at the same number?
If I can jump in, I ran the numbers just out of curiosity. The town manager in Platteville is 13% less than the average town manager on that sheet.
Yes.
Why do you have to use me?
The police chief is 19% less than the average
Yes.
on that sheet.
Yes.
The public works foreman, who works for me, is 23% less than the average on that sheet.
What is the
So
public works director, what is you?
He's a measly 10% less.
So like Eaton, it pays their town manager $100,000, and we pay ours $99,000. And they have
Okay,
more.
but wait a minute, last year Troy chose, us to pay his family's insurance.
Right.
Instead of a raise, correct?
That was the board's option.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's all, sorry. Somebody said, so we did, you know, now we're paying for his whole family's insurance, in lieu of his raise, but, you know, I don't have a problem raising the department heads, at all, I mean, I don't.
So for the purpose of tonight, do we want to, as a group, discuss this 4% and move forward with that? Or do we want to schedule another meeting and adjust department heads? One or the other?
Well, I think we could give the employees 4% raise straight across. The department heads, if you, I don't wanna leave, because did they get a raise last year, you know? Okay, so I don't wanna leave this year without the department heads getting a raise. I understand we're kind of behind.
We still have next Tuesday reserved if you want, if we want to discuss department heads. So that's an option, just throw it out there.
Yeah, we could do it next Tuesday.
And we would know the results of the election at that time as well.
Next
No,
Tuesday.
not next Tuesday.
Oh, it's not next Tuesday, it's the week after. I'm sorry.
That's
Or
fine.
do you wanna wait until after the election?
Well,
Larry, I want the election over with too, trust me.
Well, yeah, I wanna be able to answer my phone again.
Yeah.
Why have we decided to
No, we don't call you.
the 2.8 and 1.2 plan?
Well, we're discussing veering off of that for department heads.
Now, were you concerned about it muddying the water? You said something about having the hourly people on a percentage and then a pay adjustment on department heads?
No, the money in the waters that I was trying to
Is
speak
the
about is
percentage
giving
and the
department heads both percentage
Oh, both,
and pay.
okay.
I
So,
don't,
yeah, but so department heads, I agree, would be better to do an adjustment
that you do that separately from the.
separately, and then, yes, the hourly employees doing the 4.
Why don't we decide all of this after the election's over with?
Well, I'm just putting where my stance is
Oh,
right
I
now.
understand.
But yeah, this has to be finalized, I agree, let's not finalize
And I
this
agree
until
with
after
what you're
you need
saying.
enough time to get your budget, adjusted. I mean, you can kinda see where we're standing, I mean, if everybody else is in agreement there, I mean, you kinda get an idea how to adjust your budget if we're on agreement that department heads get an adjustment increase and hourly employees get the percentage.
Well, and I would hate for us to say, okay, let's do all, but the department heads at 4%, and then the election happens and it doesn't go very well, no one can go,
Yes.
never mind.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean, we're coming back, this kinda like just a preliminary brainstorm here. We'll come back around to it after the election to
You could
really finalize.
pencil in the 4% in your budget numbers
For employees.
for the employees, and then after the result of the election, we could finalize the department heads.
But it's the
I think
hope
that's what
that
we
the
take
department
5%
heads will
away
get
from
a
being
larger than 4% increase.
Right,
Is what you
yes.
guys are hoping, right?
I'm sorry.
Right.
A larger than a 4% increase is the hope that.
For the department heads, that's what you're pushing for.
If you do adjustments, that's practical, to be honest with you.
So are we gonna go off of the average of these communities? And
That-
Well,
I mean, is that?
That's why
what
we need a
we're
study
talking
session
about?
to see how you.
why don't we go home, do our homework, and we all come back with our thoughts?
Bingo.
So what I'll do is like Larry indicated, I think it's a good idea just to, I have David Green, he's off this weekend with his family when he comes back, build in the 4% increase for the hourly people, which will also adjust those other factors like the para, the workers' comp, blah, blah, blah. Adjust those numbers for the hourly people. Then you'll have a snapshot of where the budget stands before the election.
With longevity added into it.
And look at what people jump for longevity, and then I don't track that, I have to ask Mary and the staff to look at that probably.
There aren't a lot of people that are gonna make a jump this year.
No, because
2 or 3.
before, when we started longevity, it was at the beginning of the year, that wasn't fair because some people got hired on December 1st. So what we did is we adjusted that to on the anniversary date, they qualified for longevity after 3 years, 5, whatever.
Okay.
Either here or there, but I just want, so you know.
The other thing that has been discussed that I want everyone to maybe think about is, does our town manager need an assistant? Maybe a part-time assistant, full-time assistant, but an assistant. Something to think
That's what
about.
David was.
To help him,
You know what?
our town manager is an
I'm
assistant.
sorry.
Oh,
You know, someone to say, I need these phone calls made, I'm heading to this, you know, so on and what, you know.
Especially if we're going to be going into a pro-growth period where we're gonna be contacting different people. To put all that on Troy's lap, I think is unfair.
Could we hold that conversation for another day?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's, yeah, I want it, yeah.
can I get a copy of that spreadsheet they have? Not tonight, but.
Yeah, I've got it in my office. I'd like to go ahead and set a date with the second Tuesday of November, work early after the election,
Yeah,
on a separate board night. I'm not sure, that'd be, what, election on the sixth, so that'd be the 11th? Sorry,
it's
13th.
13th,
Can't do that,
yes.
no. I've been trying the budget, I can't do math.
Maybe we need to rethink this whole thing.
So would that work tentatively right now,
Yes.
just to schedule November
Yes.
13th at 6:30?
At 6:30, yes.
Typically, that's just a study session for the employee, or the elected officials handbook. You can move to 7 if you want.
No, 6:30 was fine.
And that's instead of next Tuesday night, right?
Exactly.
Yes, okay, so we're still not meeting next Tuesday.
So we'll finish up the salary discussion then.
So you're gonna have numbers as to where you'd like to see these adjustments gone to, or?
I can't, if the board wants me to make a proposal, I will do that.
Cause we were under the sentiment was that we were gonna give the hourly employees more than the salaried employees. And that's still my sentiment, and I'm sorry, I certainly see that the police chief is underpaid based on this thing, but I don't know how much
Okay,
it's
yeah,
gonna change.
you know, that's not fair to say. That was his starting salary, this is his first year, that was his starting salary.
Well, I'm just saying,
So, I
based
mean,
on
he's-
this, based
Yeah,
on
he doesn't
this
have
section.
the experience that the other police chiefs have. Not to say I don't wanna give him a raise, but you can't make that comparison because isn't this his first or second year?
I don't know if she likes you.
It's almost like
Well, I just wanna correct things.
I'm
that's
just
not-
you know, the
Yeah.
police chief is the glaring one on this form.
Right.
when you look at
But
it.
this is starting salary, so am I wrong? This is what they would advertise to hire?
Yes.
So if, we'll say Berthoud is to put an ad out for a new police chief, they would start him out at,
Right, I understand that, but when we hired Carl, this was your suggestion, was it not? Whose suggestion was it to do a starting salary for Carl and not pay him?
He's slightly under his predecessor. not
I see what you're saying.
You see what
I
I'm saying?
understand, yes, I understand.
Slightly.
Okay. I
I
understand.
mean, it's not gonna,
No.
believe me, I wanna give the department heads a larger increase than the employees. Because they do more, they do a lot more. I'm not saying the employees don't, I'm very comfortable with the way the employees are working this year. But these guys do beyond what
They
we
do
ask
more, but
them to
there
do.
are already compensated well compared to those employees that you're talking about. Not compared to other towns, I agree.
I'll work on,
Discussion.
I'll work on a couple different scenarios if you want me to.
Yes, please.
Because I come with this before previously, and
I like to hear, I appreciate your opinion.
Sure.
This is your job, this is your livelihood, these people, and your, I don't wanna say problem, cause I don't mean anything negative, but they're, this is your job.
well,
Responsibility, yes, thank you.
in worst case scenario, in my perspective alone, if 112 passes, we're gonna have some significant financial issues immediately starting in 2019, and this
No, I don't think it'll pass.
might be a moot point.
The polls are at 50% right now.
Oh, are you
Are they
kidding me?
really?
Oh, yeah.
It was
that's why-
60, it was 60-40 to pass before people. It has a very good chance of passing.
Oh, no way.
Maybe not in Weld County, but the rest of the state's gonna vote as well.
Because I was just looking at
Wow.
sales tax alone, which is a big factor with this, not necessarily property tax, that takes longer, but between a few years, back with the same shops and the same business, because compared to oil and gas industry and their influx with gas stations, restaurants, it's a couple $100,000 easily,
It's big,
so.
I think another thing that we need to start on a budget study session is how to diversify Platteville's economy
Revenue, yeah.
away from strictly oil and gas, so that we're not susceptible to this. Cause there's gonna be another bill, if this one doesn't pass, there'll be another one that's 2,000 feet and take some of the vulnerable areas out, and that would
It's gonna
probably
keep
pass.
being brought in front of us until it passes, just like marijuana.
Well, we've had those conversations, just so you know, about bringing in retail, sustainable retail, but again, like a grocery store,
They need rooftops.
they need rooftops.
Or attracting a different type of industry.
Yeah,
Smucker's plant.
I'm taking all the impact fees for it, every one of them. I'm not doing Walmart, dude. All right, so are we good till, November 6th regular meeting and November 13th study session?
So 6th is actually election day, right? So
It is election.
we'll be like watching the election results as we're somewhat.
Having the background.
The years that, and just so you know, the years that we're a polling place, we skipped the board meeting, we canceled it, but it's not.
Where do we vote?
Mary? Spencer's asking, where do we vote around here? Fort Lupton?
Yeah.
It's a mail ballot election.
Oh, mail ballot.
You just send it
Drop them
back.
off at Fort Lupton.
You can drop them off at, Fort Lupton, Dacono, Evans.
Okay, but just mail it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll be in the mail.
Perfect, thank you.
Sure.
You can drop
If
them
you
off.
don't get one, contact the county clerk's office. You can also get, replacement ballots and update your voter registration. Have you changed your address since you moved? Then you won't get a ballot.
Well, I mean, I did when I registered
I was gonna say, he
to be
can't.
here, I have to.
He can't be here and not be a registered voter.
Well, he can be registered, but if the state doesn't have your correct address, you won't get a ballot. You can go on Go Vote Colorado and say, find my registration, and
And you could
make
actually
sure
go
that
to a
it's
physical
correct.
polling place in Fort Lupton.
Yes, they're open 10 days in advance, I believe. And if you have questions, we can get you addresses.
Bring your own ballot.
Yeah.
Always grab it.
Yeah, so if you need a ballot, you're gonna have to